Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic, and let's begin part 2. Naruto could only sigh as he watched his clones finish more Senbon and Kunai around the circle of the forge. Daishin sensei. He began. I've already made over a couple hundred Senbon and Kunai with my clones making the necessary shuriken. He sighed, watching another clone standing beside Daishin as the man inspected the weapon. When can I make a sword? He asked frustratingly. Naruto-kun. Chelsea called from the doorway into the rest of the shop. The three of us need to have a talk. She began, calling both him and her husband into the shop's office. Sighing, Naruto grudgingly made his way after his senseis while his clones continued their forging. After entering the main office, Naruto looked around to once again find that there weren't any customers once again. I think, Naruto, Chelsea began as they all sat down. All of the basic training we had planned to teach you has completed. She explained, causing Naruto to growl at her. You told me that I would learn a lot of things from you, not just the simple shit. He shouted, causing both Chelsea and Daishin to wince at the volume of his voice. But as he looked at them, he frowned. I'm sorry for yelling, he said, giving them an ashamed frown and headshake. Naruto. Daishin began. Just because the basics are done, doesn't mean that we're finished teaching you things. He explained. We just can't teach you anything really other than what we have already taught you. He sighed, watching the blonde's face fall further. You're able to do more stuff than most shinobi already. Not to mention, nobody really knows about your bloodline except that you can see chakra and have really good night vision. Chelsea cut in, looking at his visor that he had yet to take off for a long while. We know that you have some kind of warning system with your chakra, or so it seems. But I think we should take some time to train you in your bloodline. She smiled as she saw his face light up. Besides, we need to know if there was anything that you actually wanted to learn other than the basics. After all, no shinobi can stay a basic shinobi and hope to survive. She explained. But, Naruto began, looking at her face now. You're already teaching me sealing. He frowned. How much more advanced can I get? He asked, looking between the two. And Daishin sensei, he began as he looked at the man that had quickly became like a father. You yourself said that you would take me on as an apprentice blacksmith in my spare time. He frowned. Naruto. Chelsea said, effectively catching his attention once again. She quickly held up a piece of paper. This is chakra affinity paper. She explained. Use some chakra and we can find out what you would be good at. She smiled. She handed him the piece of stiff paper before telling him more about it. Now listen to me. After channeling chakra to the paper will either get soaked, water, burn, fire, turns to dust, earth, crumble, lightning, or split in half, wind. She explained, causing Naruto to smile. Channeling some chakra into the paper promptly exploded. Oops, he began. Too much chakra. While he looked at the little remains of the paper, Chelsea and Daishin looked from the boy then to each other. Taking out a weird block, Chelsea handed it to Naruto. Okay. Now that wasn't weird in itself. She chuckled dryly. I want you to channel different amounts of chakra to each of your fingers and press them into the grooves on the block. She explained, causing Naruto to smile as he examined the block. 3 hours later, Hokage's office. Sarutobi was looking out at the village as he smoked on his pipe absently. I'm glad things are so quiet. He sighed to himself. But as he turned around, Sarutobi had to brace himself in shock at seeing two animals on his desk. One of them was what looked like a decently sized ferret, while the other was a slightly smaller, and slightly worried-looking blue and green-skinned snake as it looked at the ferret, the other animal ignoring the animal next to him. Both of the animals held a scroll in some way or another. Hokage-sama. The ferret sighed, holding up a scroll. Chelsea and Daishin-sama send word. Sarutobi was on the ferret almost instantly. What is the good word, ferret-san? He asked, slowly taking the scroll. Read for yourself. The ferret growled. I'm out of here. The animal sighed before puffing out of existence. Taking a quick look at the frightened snake, Sarutobi opened the scroll. Sarutobi-sama. This is to notify you that Naruto has far exceeded our original expectations. He is learning a small amount of sealing and is eager to learn more. I am stunting the growth in that regard for various reasons. He is also looking into forging as he says that he already talked with you about it. He is right now pestering my husband to teach him how to forge swords. Something that I am curious about, since he should be more concerned with learning the art of other things. As such, I have asked him what else he would like to learn. He has yet to answer my question, but we have proceeded to test his affinities. Main, wind, secondary, water, and another thing that is curious. He has shown the makings of a small affinity for lightning. I don't know if that shows a cause for concern, but it is something that would be needed, I think. Chelsea. Now, after reading this, Sarutobi was officially worried. If Naruto develops those affinities, he would be truly powerful. He thought as he looked at the pictures on the wall. What should I do? He shouted to the former Hokages. Now I have to worry that he'll turn into Itachi or even worse, since he has that bitch of a fox. He thought as he massaged his temples, completely forgetting the now absent snake. Next morning, Naruto smiled at the shocked expressions on Chelsea and Daishin's faces. Are you sure about this? Daishin asked. I mean, we can't really teach you anything that would help you. He explained. Chelsea could only smile. Taking out a small piece of paper, she quickly created a clone and sent it out of the store. I think we may have something to help with that kiddo. She smiled before tossing him several scrolls. I know we taught you a lot of theory about jutsu, but these are gonna be interesting. She laughed at the look of awe now adorning Naruto's face. Those scrolls have almost every kind of elemental chakra that you could imagine. She explained, only to be tackled to the ground by Naruto rather quickly. Naruto could barely contain his glee. He continued to hug her with as much of his strength as he could manage. Finally being able to control his emotions, Naruto stood up only to smile at Daishin, in which he tackled the blacksmith as well. Naruto. Daishin began again as he pulled the blonde away from him. Once again, are you sure you know what you are doing by asking to be taught this, even though we really can't do much in the way of teaching you? He asked. Yes, I am. Naruto smiled before running out of the office to where he was temporarily stationed for his book training. Is everything all right, Daishin-kun? Chelsea asked, standing beside her husband as she massaged his shoulder. I just never thought that Naruto would want to learn that of all things. Daishin sighed. He's learning to work the forge, and he's learning sealing. But you're concerned that he wants to learn to do poison? She asked. It's not that. Daishin sighed. It's that he wants to find a way to turn his chakra into poison, as if he was wanting to create his own bloodline. Chelsea simply continued to massage her husband's shoulders and smiled absently, hoping that their student would do okay. Graduation day. Naruto had woken up early that day and polished off a cup of ramen before Daishin and Chelsea even woke up. Looking around the shop, Naruto smiled as he looked at the shelves that he had helped stock. Numerous amounts of his high-quality shuriken were standing proudly before him. Looking back at the last 4 months, Naruto could only smile as he realized that he had in fact learned a great deal. Even now, after the last month, he had come to realize some things that would really be impossible. One of the things was that he was in his own mind, and at least somewhat decent blacksmith. The second thing is that he loved the art of sealing. Everything about it seemed wicked and cool, even if the beginnings of it was slightly more than boring. But the third thing that seemed to both scare and surprise everyone that he had shown, was that Naruto had somehow become highly adaptive toward poisons. But as he looked around the shop that he had been living in, he could only smile at the bare look of the place. Nothing seemed to matter to him, not even the exam that was going to take place today. All he could think about as he looked around the room, was the last 4 months of his life and how he had grown. Looking at a shelf, he smiled as he saw that the swords in the section were not from him. But he didn't mind it. Daishin and Chelsea Sensei had told him that he would only learn more after he had graduated from the academy and became a shinobi of the village. Now, thanks to his shadow clones, Naruto had already learned to do many of the things that he had wanted to ever learn. He had learned every kind of shadow clone technique, kunai, senbon, and shuriken, in secret away from his sensei's turned parents. But he only knew how the theory behind a lot of other things that both Chelsea and Daishin had made him promise that he would not attempt without them present. Large weapon forging was one of them. He could only smile as he looked at his wrists and armbands. His bloodline, he had soon discovered, was exactly like Chelsea Sensei had told him. Nobody knew anything about it. He had dubbed it the Darkness Eye, mainly because of what his bloodline seemed to thrive in. But he soon found out that, like Manezia had said, he could push the range but found it would narrow his vision, and since it was constantly active, he would always have a problem with the control over his chakra. He found out quite by accident that he was able to actually see the chakra that was being forced into a jutsu and how it was being manipulated. Something that had led to him and his clones picking up the water walking and the tree walking exercises very easily. Wrestling his large belt around his waist, Naruto smiled when he felt the seals activating to his chakra. He held a small arsenal amongst his entire body. Senbon, Shuriken, and Kunai were sealed into the spots on his waist. All of them made from the black metal that he himself had asked Daishin and the Hokage for. Placing his newest combat boots, the ones that had lifting seals and sound seals emblazoned on the heel of each of them. Taking one last look at the shop and the adjourning rooms, he smiled a foxy grin once again and closed the door behind him. Naruto took one last look around and sighed. When is he gonna learn? He shouted. Aren't you gonna stop trying to kill me, Inu? He shouted, looking directly up at the one person who had become like a plaque to him. Shaking his head, Naruto turned back to the alley in front of him. I don't care who you think you are, but your sensei, the fourth, would be ashamed of you. He shouted, causing Inu to look at him with rage. Go to hell, demon. The Anbu shouted. If I had my way about it, Uzumaki Naruto and his bitch of a mother would never have been born. He shouted loud enough just for the two of them to hear. Naruto looked up at the Anbu once again. I don't care what you think, ya overgrown stain on the wall. He growled. But you should think more clearly after a night of drinking, don't you think? He said, turning his head down to start walking only to dash to the side to avoid a rather weird feeling blur contact with the earth where he had been. Looking back the way he came, Naruto saw that it was in fact Inu who had crashed into the ground, a fist stuck in the ground. Oh, now isn't this priceless? He shouted at the Anbu. I will kill you, boy. The dog-masked Anbu spat. I will gladly kill you for the sake of fixing my sensei's mistake. You know what? You should give yourself the axe, especially since you have so much hate for a little kid. A deeper voice called out. Naruto looked to the source to see Daishin and Chelsea standing there. Go on, kiddo. Come see us after you get your headband. The man smiled. We'll deal with Inu over here. Okay. Naruto smiled, giving his surrogate family a genuine smile before leaping into the air and taking off as soon as his boots touched the roof. With Daishin and Chelsea. Now that the kid is gone, Chelsea chuckled absently. You can tell us why the hell you have come back here after you were told to never show yourself again. She growled, popping her knuckles. I don't care who you think you are, woman. Inu growled. But that boy of a demon should have been killed at birth. He shouted. And I have already made plans to deal with this blight on my beautiful village. He laughed maniacally. Your own sensei would be ashamed of you. Daishin sighed. You have been attacking his own son and you think that you can get away with it. He growled. The fourth Hokage was never married. The Anbu panted, looking around behind his mask. If he had a son I would have known about it. He grunted, finally being able to pull his hand free. I would have been told. He whispered. He would have been bragging about it to the entire village. His only response to what he was saying was that the two in front of him disappeared into the shop. You're gonna regret it, Inu shouted. Just you wait and see. He growled. In the middle of the night, when you're both asleep, that demon will kill you. Then he will burn your pathetic store to the ground. Anbu-san. Chelsea growled, turning around to face him once again, her face as passive as she could make it. You should be killed. Inu was visibly shocked at what she had said. What are you talking about? He ranted. The Kyuubi is a menace. Oh, I agree that the Kyuubi's a menace of a bitch. Chelsea frowned as she walked closer to the Anbu. But the Kyuubi is sealed inside a very powerful seal. She began. And if I ever hear about you threatening my store again, even in the most basic of ways, she explained. You will not be around long enough to scream, much less anything else. How dare you threaten me? I'm Anbu. I have every right to do what must be done to protect this village. Even if that means protecting this pathetic store. Inu shouted, gesturing to the building in front of him. But as he began trying to say something else, his face was shoved upward by Chelsea's knee connecting with his chin. I don't care if you're the Easter Bunny. Chelsea growled. You wanna fight someone? Then fine. I can kick your 3 ways from sundown. She spat on his mask before he looked back down. You weren't the only one who was trained by Minato-sensei. She shouted. Holding out her right hand, a perfect sphere appeared in her hand, much to the shock of Inu. So you think you can take on someone who helped him perfect his own Rasengan? She asked. You whore. Inu yelled, his eyes bloodshot behind his mask as he lunged for her, only to meet face first with the woman's bare foot. Come near my store again, little Inu, Chelsea growled, dissipating the Rasengan. And I will personally rearrange every little thing on that face that isn't even covered. Do I make myself clear? She shouted, making both Daishin and Inu sweat before Inu was kicked out of the alley. Academy. Naruto smiled as he adjusted his belt. He was now outside of the academy, looking at the building that had been his sanctuary for so long. Looking around for the kids, Naruto could only frown as he saw no one. But as he thought about it, he could only conclude that they were already in their classes, waiting for school to begin. As he walked inside, Naruto sighed as he breathed in the lovely scent of books and scrolls that he had almost forgotten. Taking a glance behind him, Naruto smiled as he reached a light and with a click, the light was gone. Naruto quickly removed his visor and looked around in the dark. Everything seemed to be in place from where he remembered. But as he looked around, he noticed that his eyes were not detecting any kind of chakra from what looked like inside the entire building. Sighing angrily, Naruto placed his visor back over his eyes and smiled. How he loved his bloodline. Walking along the halls, Naruto could only think about what would happen on the graduation exam. But as he looked around, Naruto's mind seemed to be playing all kinds of scenarios. I just hope it's not a book exam, he thought. Realizing quickly that he was indeed at his former classroom, Naruto opened the door only to be greeted with silence. Not that there weren't people in the classroom, but that nobody was in fact awake. Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi were sleeping at their desks, with Choji slightly drooling on the desk. But as he looked at the 2 senseis that were standing behind the front desk, he could only frown. Mizuki looked about ready to kill, while Iruka was practically gaping wide-eyed at him. But any further conversation that was even close to ensue was quickly ended when Naruto jumped to the side, miraculously avoiding another oh-so-forgetful thing from the class, Sasuke Uchiha. The black-haired brooder immediately looked at him before sneering in his direction. Naruto, however, had to hide what he was feeling. Kyuubi-chan. He began, hoping he was wrong. Is it me, or does Sasuke-tem have what looks like 2 sets of chakra? He asked, looking the boy up and down behind his visor. And why the hell would the second one be moving? Not even yours moves like that. Kyuubi, however, was not really even thinking about what could have caused it, more concerned about something else altogether. That fool, she shouted, turning around in the field that now represented her cage. This is not going to end well. She growled under her breath. The last time that technique was used was ages ago. Naruto, blessedly unaffected by Kyuubi's whispering, looked around at the other students that were now filing into the classroom. He watched as Hinata came in, however, with a different set of views. Why does she have some kind of chakra at her neck? He thought to himself, looking at the side of Hinata's neck as she passed him, bandages around her neck. Kit, Kyuubi shouted. That girl, from the smell of it, has been married off into some other clan in Konoha. She began. It sometimes happens for political marriages. She explained as Naruto's eyes narrowed. So, he frowned. You're saying that not only is she married before she is even an adult, but that she is in fact married for political reasons? He asked worriedly. Oh, this is not going to be good. I actually think that this might help her. Kyuubi smiled in her cage. After all, Manezia can be yours now. Without Hinata being upset and using that stupid seal on her. Kyuubi-chan. Naruto frowned. I know that nobody but me can hear you, he began. But can you please not try to get my hopes up? He sighed, continuing to lean into the corner he had chosen. Hiashi would never allow the demon of Konoha to marry into even the branch family. This has nothing to do with that stupid blowhard. Kyuubi growled, slamming her tails into the ground, causing Naruto to wince. Other POVs. Mizuki and Iruka had talked early in the day, wanting to find out about what the Hokage had meant by having their work cut out for them today. But when a certain blonde demon Mizuki's term, walked into the room, after being absent for 4 months, as well as being expelled because of the actions that had, supposedly, happened that day. Iruka was shocked only to see Naruto looking extremely different than he did the last time he had seen him. The outfit that the blonde was wearing was just the beginning. Instead of the jumpsuit, Naruto was instead wearing a pair of long baggy black and red camouflage-colored cargo pants, taped off at his feet with some kind of black cloth or those restriction seals. Iruka asked. The blonde's shirt was a simple loose-fitting white vest shirt with long-sleeved fishnet covering his arms, with what looked like black spandex underneath. Fingerless gloves only revealed the same spandex-like material. And the visor over his eyes made Iruka wonder what had happened to the blonde during his time away from the academy. Silently watching the blonde as the other students came in, he was shocked to see that Naruto had not only become calmer, but that he was literally just standing there, not even complaining once. Is it me, or has he grown taller? He asked himself, looking to his fellow teacher as he addressed the students. All right, you maggots. Mizuki growled. Today, you all are going to take your genin exams. You either pass, or you fail. He grunted, sitting down behind the desk and a large stack of papers. When I call your names up here, come down and get your test. He grunted. Note to self, 4 bottles of sake the night before an exam, not good. He thought, rubbing his temples in pain. Excuse me, Mizuki-sensei. Sakura piped up, causing Mizuki to wince in pain. After getting a nod from the teacher, she continued. I thought that new students weren't supposed to be coming into a graduate's class. She began before pointing toward Naruto in the corner. So what is that dropout doing here? She shrieked, causing Iruka to fall over in his chair and Mizuki to groan out in pain. For your information, Haruna-san. The blonde piped up, causing everyone to look at him in surprise. His voice sounds so cold. Hinata thought, looking at her former crush. She had only noticed him when she had finally sat down. He seemed to exude an aura of severe confidence. Something that she had never seen in him. Looking at everyone else's reactions, Hinata could only sigh as she looked at her once unknown crush. But as she thought of him, she remembered the night so many months ago when her father had taken her from the elder Hyuga's meeting area. Flashback. Hinata walked into her father's office, her face downcast yet knowledgeable about what was about to take place. Only 2 options, she thought. Caged bird and banishment from the clan, she sighed. Or marriage, seal and all. The marriage seal would be the original idea behind the caged bird seal. Taking in how Hiyashi was looking at her, she could only frown in worry. Her father had always been someone for tradition. Hinata. Hiyashi began. You and I both know that for some reason you don't show how strong you are. He frowned as Hinata seemed to jump. I don't know what it is about you actually afraid to harm someone or something in that nature, but the only way for me to really save you from any kind of negative fate, would be to make a political marriage to someone outside the clan. He explained, holding up several forms from the stack. The elders do not know that I have several men that are able to take care of you and actually show you what you are really lacking in the shinobi arts. He replied, stopping any kind of retort from his daughter. Now hold on. He smiled, shocking Hinata slightly. I know that you think no one knows why you don't fight or anything. Many of the Hyuga know that you hate the caged bird seal and wish for it to be banished from us. He explained. So, effectively barring your own death, the marriage seal is to be finally used after a very long time. He smiled, grabbing a bottle of ink from his desk. But, To-san, Hinata coughed, looking around. Who am I to marry? She stammered hesitantly. I think it is at least proper to know who I am to marry. Oh, that is in fact the case. In fact, me and his mother have talked about the possibility of a union between his and our clans for quite a few months. Hiyashi chuckled before sliding a small folder across to her. Flashback end. Even now she could not help but twitch at the very idea of being married to that person. But as she looked from Naruto to him, she really couldn't imagine a better choice than her for him. It was with a heavy shoulder that she had to leave her Naruto-kun alone. It's for the betterment of the clan. She thought sadly. With Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke looked at Naruto as the entire class gasped at the way he looked and sounded. But as Sasuke looked at him, some weird voice in the back of his head was making noises that he could not control nor understand. It sounded happy, but yet angry. Sasuke quickly pushed it to the darker recesses of his mind. Now if only I could get rid of whatever the hell is wrong with my stomach. He growled to himself as he looked at the class again, forcefully removing Naruto from his gaze, only to have his head virtually pushed to look back at the blonde. What is wrong with me? He shouted to himself, only to be swamped away from the pain in his abdomen and a resounding pain in the back of his head. Why can't I look away? Because I don't want you to look away. A feminine voice called from the back of his mind, causing him to smack himself in the face in exasperation. What is wrong with me? He asked himself again. Sakura. Sakura looked at the blonde in front of her, only to shy away from his gaze. Mommy told me he was gone. She thought in worry. Now he's gonna eat me. She shrieked. He's not a demon. Inner Sakura shouted at her, causing her to gulp. If he was a demon, you would have already been dead from all the pain you've given him. Inner Sakura reasoned. Sakura humphed, before going right back to staring at her. Sasuke-kun. Naruto. Naruto could only sigh as he looked everyone in the eye who was watching him, including Sasuke and Mizuki. I know that damn Uchiha is going to be pissed about how strong I am. He thought as he looked the black-haired emo down. Then again, the one who expelled me should have something to say about it as well. He sighed, looking the man in the eye when he saw the mad zeal on the man's eyes. So, Naruto frowned. Are we going to get the exams on the way here, or should I call out that someone is disrupting the exams? He asked, looking at the senseis. The only one who is disrupting this class, is you, ya lowlife demon. Sakura yelled. Why don't you go away into your cave like you're supposed to? She yelled, pointing out toward the windows of the classroom. Now, needless to say that you could hear a pin drop in the room would be an understatement. But when the person she was targeting looked her in the eye, Sakura immediately faltered when saw that no one would come to her defense. Haruna-san. Naruto began coldly. Maybe you should explain to everyone here what you were referring to when you call me a demon. Since I am, as you can see, not a demon. I mean, where is the tail and fur? He asked, holding his hands out to show them he had none of the said items. My mommy told me, she began, only to stop as she felt the glare coming at her from somewhere in the room. Looking around the room, she literally saw everyone's eyes on her. But as she returned her gaze to Naruto, I can't tell them about the Kyuubi. Mommy told me that it's a secret from the Hokage, saying that anyone telling them of this gets killed. She thought. I heard it around the village that you were a demon. She shrieked, knowing that she already caught herself in a lie. Naruto simply looked at her. Moving around the desk to look her in the eye, he could only smile. So, Sakura Haruna. He smiled. I wonder who I should turn in for breaking any kinds of law. He sighed, causing Sakura's eyes to widen in fear. Oh well. Doesn't have anything to do with me. Naruto laughed, causing Sakura to slightly chuckle with him. Now, Mizuki-sensei, Iruka-sensei. Can we please get this shit over with? He shouted. Hokage's office. Sarutobi could only sigh as he looked at the paperwork in front of him. It's going to be worse tomorrow. He thought as he signed another piece of useless paperwork, something that was talking about the council members demanding better protection from the shinobi of Chunin and below. Sighing, Sarutobi simply slammed his denied seal on the paperwork. Especially with the genin tests today. He sighed, hoping whatever training Naruto had received would help him complete the tests. He deserves to at least have something for himself. He chuckled. Taking a few seconds to look at the available Junin for the teams, he could only sigh. Unfortunately, I have none who would even try to teach him, much less have him for a team. His thoughts were interrupted as his door swung open, revealing Chelsea walking in, with her husband behind her. Sarutobi-sama, we need to talk. She began, bowing as soon as she came near his desk. Well, Sarutobi frowned, wondering what had happened now with Naruto. Did something happen? He asked, looking between the two. Naruto-kun is fine. Daishin smiled as he looked into the Hokage's eyes. But we had a little altercation with one of your Anbu earlier this morning. He explained, causing Sarutobi's eyes to widen. Tell me, he ordered, knowing something important must have happened for the two of them to be looking as they were. Inu tried to kill Naruto as he was going to the exam this morning. When it didn't work, He started talking crazy about Minato-sensei and acting like something was wrong. Chelsea began, holding up a rather bent-up piece of metal. He said that I was a whore and that I should be killed. She growled. Daishin was there in a second, holding her hands in front of her. Calm down, love, he whispered. You know that you're not. Unless it's with me. He smiled, causing the both of them to blush. Okay. Sarutobi coughed, drawing their attention back to him. Well, all I can really do is find out why all this is happening. He explained. I will make sure that Inu knows his place. Very, very soon. He sighed. Now, is there anything else that I can help you with? He asked. Actually, Chelsea smiled, nodding to Daishin. Her husband gave a chuckle before he looked away. There is something I felt that we should talk about, she said, her grin making Sarutobi think of a certain blonde-haired Jinchuriku. Academy. Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka Senpai. A voice called out behind the door, alerting everyone to the voice's presence. Naruto simply smiled before he looked around at everyone, giving nods to everyone important, meaning Sakura and Sasuke got ignored totally, before he looked Iruka in the eye. He smiled at his sensei before standing up and walking out the door, only to see the appearance of an Anbu member wearing a cat mask, purple hair cascading down her back as she knelt beside the door. Two swords sat strapped to her back even as she sat there. Naruto frowned as he felt Iruka standing behind him. Uzumaki Naruto, the Anbu began. Are you ready for your exams? She asked. More than ready. Naruto chuckled silently, hoping Iruka wouldn't be mad. After all, he always said that he wanted to give me my tests separately. He thought, inwardly crawling on the ground laughing as he saw the old man's humor even now. Anbu-san, Iruka interrupted, looking between the two of them. I was under the impression that Uzumaki-san here would be taking his tests with the rest of the class. He explained, gesturing to the classroom. The Hokage feels that Uzumaki Naruto has been plagued by people with prejudice to his occupant so as to hinder his progress. The Anbu said, nodding to the class. The Hokage has thus made an entirely different test to give the boy. It explained. Thank you for explaining this to him, ma'am. Naruto smiled, inwardly sighing as the Anbu's arms turned red in embarrassment. Damn glad that Chelsea-sensei taught me manners. He thought, looking forward to his test. Are you sure it's not because of how pretty that Anbu looks when she blushes? The fox asked, her voice sounding slightly jealous. Hush you. Naruto chuckled. Now, if you are ready, Uzumaki-san. The Anbu replied, pointing down the hall. Follow me please, she said before turning around and walking away. Halfway to what he had assumed would be the room for the test, the Anbu turned around quickly, causing Naruto to jump back thanks to his instincts. His instincts saved him as the female Anbu held a long-bladed dagger right at where he had been standing. What the hell? He shouted, looking at where the dagger would have landed. It would have most likely stopped right at his throat. Naruto? Iruka asked, looking back at the way Naruto was standing. Unbeknownst to Naruto, he had jumped back so fast he had clung to the ceiling, his feet braced at a beam. Looking now at the upside-down pair, Naruto's eyes narrowed. So, you're one of those Anbu that want to kill me because of the fox, huh? He asked, anger clear in his voice. I apologize, Uzumaki-san. The Anbu said, embarrassment now evident. I tend to overreact when I feel someone looking at my. She explained, motioning for him to come down as she put away the dagger. Naruto sighed as he did a backflip and landed on his feet. But before he could do or say anything, he was embraced in a hug by the Anbu. Shock could only be seen on his face, even through his visor. I know what you are. The Anbu began before pulling back to kneel in front of him, her hand on his shoulder. I know who you are. I also know much more, she said, tilting her head to the side. But I also know that you are not what you contain, she said before removing the bottom part of her mask and kissing him on the forehead. Now, Naruto is usually not someone to be embarrassed about something. But being hugged by a really strong Kinuichi and then kissed on the forehead by that same one, would make anyone really embarrassed. Oh, okay. Naruto stammered, making Iruka think that Naruto resembled a certain Hyuga clan member. The kiss was just for luck. The Anbu chuckled. Besides, you're a little young for me, she said with a smile before placing the bottom of her mask back on. The three quickly found the room and entered it. Naruto's genin exam was going to begin. Classroom. Mizuki frowned as he looked around the room at the students in front of him. I hope that they kill that damn demon. He growled to himself. He doesn't even deserve to be alive. He thought before his mind started to wander. I wonder what that bitch of a girlfriend of mine is doing. He thought, imagining what he would be doing most of the night after he got done with the stupid class. He mentally did a checklist. Inform the Hokage of Sasuke placing as Rookie of the Year. Steal the Forbidden Scroll, blaming it on the demon brat. Kill said demon. Girlfriend till next Tuesday. Mizuki could only chuckle as he looked at his meal ticket out of the academy. Being the one to teach the last Uchiha would cause the entire council to rise above the Hokage and promote him to Junin for sure. He smiled sinisterly as he looked at the boy. He just needs to answer the questions and he should be fine. He smiled. After all, I don't think that anyone can beat him in taijutsu, and with the kunai and shuriken I have with him, he should get 100% out of the accuracy, not that he would have any trouble. Sakura. Sakura could barely contain her glee as she looked at the questions in her paper. I'm gonna graduate, she shouted to herself, looking over at Sasuke as he took his test. Making sure she didn't become obvious, she looked at his paper. Even Sasuke is finished with his test. That must mean we're destined to be together. She sighed happily. Take that Ino pig. Naruto's exam. Iruka. Iruka frowned at the room they were in. Naruto would undoubtedly feel comfortable however, and that was what he guessed the Hokage would have been going for. The Anbu had taken a station inside the room as they entered it. But when Naruto saw where they were, he had laughed uncontrollably. I guess it would only be natural. He thought. I mean, a prankster like him would already know everything about the detention room in the academy. He sighed. But now, as Naruto wrote furiously on his test, Iruka was worried. Whatever the Hokage had wanted for Naruto to be tested, Iruka could only hope that both the Hokage knew what he was doing, and if Naruto was sure he knew the answers. With Naruto. Naruto had been happy when he had entered the room. Oji-san sure knows how to be nostalgic. He laughed. But as he looked through the small booklet in front of him, Naruto could barely contain his whistle. He was already through most of it, but Naruto could barely contain his happiness in the way that the questions were asked. What would you need to break into a level 3 building being continuously patrolled by squads of Anbu-level shinobi? And that had been the first question. As Naruto had progressed through the test, he realized that some of the questions in the exam had rung more than a few bells for the young blonde. Smiling, he looked around the room before nodding to both Iruka and the Anbu before going through the rest of his test. 20 minutes later, Iruka looked through the answer sheet one last time before giving Naruto's small booklet another glance. I can't believe it, he thought absently. Some of these questions are way above genin level. He frowned as he looked at one in particular. Which would be better in a shinobi, strength or agility? The question asked. Now, Iruka knew that most people, himself included, would say that strength was more important in any kind of shinobi. But Naruto surprised him once again by saying that agility was more important. And he actually gave an explanation for the answer. He sighed, handing the booklet to the Anbu. Please take this to the Hokage. He said, rubbing his temples. I can't properly correct it. He explained, causing Naruto to worry about his test. Is there a problem, Iruka-sensei? He asked, looking to the walking Anbu's back, before dropping his gaze absently to her. She does have a nice though. He thought as he looked back to his sensei. Sasuke. Sasuke had to hold himself in a crouched position as he finished looking over his test. Damn this pain. He shouted to whatever was inside his head. What the hell is causing me so much pain? He shouted again. The presence in the back of his head was silent, but whatever was going on, seemed to be getting stronger. It was in his shoulder now. Luckily, as he shunted more and more of his attention to it, he realized that it was in his weaker right arm. It wouldn't affect his aim or anything like that, so he would have no hindrance to his tests. As he looked around the room, he could only frown as he saw that Sakura was already done with her test, and was staring at him with what looked like stars in her eyes. Kami must want to curse me. He shouted to the heavens. Naruto. Naruto frowned as he and Iruka walked out of the room they were in. So, when are we doing the rest of the test? He asked, looking at a clock in the wall. The rest of the class shouldn't be done for another hour. He explained. Naruto, you're getting everything pretty fast, since I want you done before the rest of the class is there. Iruka said as the two walked outside the building. They stopped at the target range. You're getting everything now, he explained, holding up a tray of what looked to Naruto's now somewhat trained eyes as piss-poor quality weaponry. Naruto hesitated before cutting some of the chakra to his eyes. I can't go blind when I throw these. He frowned. Iruka-sensei, can I use my own weapons? He asked, inching toward a seal on his arm. No, Naruto. Iruka frowned, looking at the seals decorating Naruto's arms. Just curious, Naruto, how many weapons do you have on you? He asked, his eyes wandering over the rest of his students' arms and legs. Oh, I would have to say about over 1,000 kunai, shuriken and senbon. Naruto blushed. Taking a curious look, Naruto frowned. Is that not enough? He asked. Iruka looked at the blonde like he had grown a second head or something. Okay. Iruka frowned. I don't know how you got so many of them, but oh well. He sighed. No, Naruto. You can't use your own equipment. He began. All students are supposed to use academy-forged weapons. He explained hesitantly. But, Iruka-sensei. He frowned. These are so, well, I guess you can say whoever made these made them shitty as hell. He said, holding one up. I mean, look what happens when he began, but shut his mouth, scratching the back of his head. Sorry, Iruka-sensei. I didn't mean to insult the Academy's forge contractors. He sighed, holding up each of them. Without Iruka even realizing what had happened, the throwing stars and kunai were embedded in the targets. Iruka looked at the targets in fright. Sometimes, Iruka's thoughts intruded again. This kid really scares me. He sighed. Naruto. He began. I know you haven't been used to our new targets. He said, causing Naruto's grin to falter. But you're supposed to aim for the critical areas, clearly marked. He explained, pointing to the targeted areas on each of the newly shaped targets. Iruka-sensei, I know my anatomy now. Naruto began, pointing to each of the areas he hit. Naruto began to explain what he had been aiming for. Iruka began to sweat as he looked at the areas as the blonde explained everything. Who could have taught him this shit? He thought as he realized that the blonde was in fact right. Okay. Iruka coughed, causing Naruto to look at him with concern, which actually surprised Iruka slightly. He just explained that the human body could be killed by a shuriken to the armpit and he still worries about someone else. He thought to himself, patting the boy on his head. Taking one last look at the 10 targets shaped like humans of varying gender, Iruka marked down on small pictures on the clipboard beside him. Making a side note on the side, Iruka made a nod only for the same cat-masked Anbu to appear. She took the small scroll from Iruka before whispering in his ears, causing Iruka's eyes to widen. Naruto was now sick and tired of everyone keeping secrets from him. What is it, Iruka-sensei? He asked. Did I do something bad? He asked worriedly. Naruto. Iruka laughed. I don't know how you keep doing it. He said absently as he turned to him. Come on. He smiled, looking toward the sparring ring a few yards away. It's time for your taijutsu test. He explained, causing Naruto to yell out in happiness. 2 hours later, Mizuki sternly walked out of the classroom, a class of bored students behind him. Damn that Nara, he shouted to himself as he looked back at the lazy pineapple-headed student. Saving the last 2 questions for right at the end of the limit. He growled silently. I should flunk his if he wasn't so much of a genius. He threatened absently. Reaching the targets, Mizuki noticed that a set-off of the trays had already been used, but as he looked at the targets, he could only growl as he saw that nothing was different about the targets. Damn repairing seals. He growled absently. Wow. Look at that. Sakura shouted. That baka Naruto didn't hit anything. She shrieked, causing everyone to clench their fists in pain. Shut up. Shikamaru growled, holding his ears in pain. It's even too troublesome to explain. He growled, walking under the tree. Forehead. Ino piped in. The academy is using a new type of target starting this year. She explained. So, whatever Naruto-san hit, we won't know unless he tells us. She sighed. How is that possible? Sakura shouted. That's not fair. making it so nobody can see Sasuke-kun's hits. She shouted in outrage. They have repairing seals placed on them. Hinata sighed as she looked at the pink-haired bitch. Now shut up, she growled. Some of us have important things in our lives that this means the beginning of. Shut up, Sakura shouted. Just because your own clan doesn't want anything to do with you, doesn't mean the rest of us have to listen to you, bitch. She squealed, thinking that Sasuke was looking at her, which he was off to the side, studying the targets. Hokage's office. 1 hour ago. Sarutobi laughed as he looked through everything that had happened during Naruto's test. Both the test itself and from the Anbu cat as she gave him an explanation for everything. Cat, he called out, causing her to stiffen slightly. I know that you have something to say regarding this. Please, speak your mind. Hokage-sama, Uzumaki-san already knows the wall climbing exercise. He has proven that he has exceptional reflexes. She said with a blush. I thought that he was being a pervert, staring at me if I am correct. But when I pulled my dull dagger, I thought that Naruto would take it or something. He was 6 feet away on the ceiling, glaring at me like I betrayed him. She explained when the Hokage looked at her. I wasn't even going to hurt him, much less cut him, but he had that much foresight and reflexes. She explained again. Okay. Sarutobi frowned. I can see where that would be important. He smiled. Holding up the paper with Naruto's accuracy test, he sighed. Did you notice him doing anything during this? He asked, looking at the pictures of the targets. I mean, he made more accurate kills than Itachi, for crying out loud. He chuckled, examining the pictures again. 3 kills by jugular piercing. He sighed. I mean, out of the 20 allowed weapons, all of them missed the targets themselves and focused on actual kill shots. He thought, realizing as he looked through them. Kunai. Shuriken. 3 in jugular, 2 in crotch, this one made Sarutobi wince. 3 through both inner thighs, 2 in each eye. 3 through armpits, 2 through the armpit. 1 through forehead, 1 through where each wrist would be. Sarutobi whistled as he calculated what would happen if all went to where they seemed to be going. Torture and interrogation would love to teach him more than this. He sighed, imagining Anko and Ibiki getting their hands on Naruto. Sarutobi-sama. Cat began. Uzumaki threw those weapons so fast I could barely see him through them. She explained. In less than a second, he had them already thrown. She explained, causing Sarutobi's eyes to widen. Is there a problem with the test, Hokage-sama? She asked hesitantly. Cat, if there was a reason for concern, it would be with the way Naruto, according to Iruka, mind you, tore him apart during the taijutsu test. Sarutobi frowned as he looked over Iruka's report. Get me, guy. He sighed. Hokage-sama, I am not trying to disrespect you. Cat's sweat dropped. But are you sure that guys should be involved? She asked. I have to be able to know if Naruto is as good as this report says. Sarutobi sighed. At the very least tell him that he is needed to test someone's. He took a deep breath. No need to say it, Hokage-sama. Cat groaned. I understand. She sighed before disappearing. Now, Sarutobi began as he stood up. Seeing a small indent on his desk, he could only frown as he picked up a mask in front of him. Flashback. Sarutobi looked at the Anbu in front of him, looking Inu up and down as the man stood at a relaxed attention, something that really caused Sarutobi to look at him strangely. Now, Inu. He began. I have it on good authority that you have been doing back alley schemes lately, specifically towards numerous individuals in the village. Care to explain that? He asked. I have done nothing outside of my orders, Hokage-san. The man in front of him began. Every single point of my mission parameters are being followed as instructed. Sarutobi could barely contain any kind of aggravation in his face as he looked to the shadows. His own Anbu were looking at Inu like he was crazy. But once they looked back at him, they shook their heads. And what mission is it that you are on that allows you to terrorize shops that have been declared off limits by many of the populace? He asked. Ikiruka ramen stand has been prospering of late, thanks to many different things, but still you have tried to set the place on fire, using street thugs that think that they are under orders from me to attack different civilians. He shouted. Tell me, Inu, WHO the hell has given you such an order? He shouted at the top of his lungs, causing him to lose his breath. I am under orders from you, Hokage-san. Inu said flatly. So, Sarutobi frowned. Refresh my memory as to what this mission is. He asked, looking at the 4 guards in the office. Your mission parameters said to restrict several key members from seeking help in any regard from you. As such, those members of the village are to be beaten repeatedly as the situation allows it. The Anbu began. Your orders also state that I am able to requisition any member of the village for such a task and pay them for said activities. He continued. And the last of your orders dictated that I am to kill the original members after making their lives miserable and alone, all before they attempt to graduate from the academy. Sarutobi was flabbergasted as he looked at his former Anbu captain. He was already hating where this was going. And who were these members that were to be killed after being beaten repeatedly and ostracized? All before graduating the academy. He groaned silently, feeling his age. Uzumaki Naruto, Hyuga Hinata as well as Hyuga Neji, the Ikiruka family, and members of the Inuzuka clan. Inu grumbled angrily, his hands clenching in some kind of pain while his entire body broke out in sweat. After he said the names, he broke down in agony, literally screaming what he could out of his mouth as smoke began to rise up from the mask. But before Sarutobi could have any of his own Anbu restrain him, Inu was on his feet, his father's remade sword in his hand as he rushed Sarutobi's desk. And you, Sarutobi Hiruzen, 3rd Hokage of Konohagakure, and demon lover. He shouted, raising his weapon to attack. Flashback end. Even as Sarutobi thought about it, he could not have imagined what could have happened to cause Kakashi Hatake, one of the finest Junin in the village, to go so far as to actually try to kill him. The man had been forcefully restrained and hauled over to the hospital after having his mask removed. Sarutobi did not envy the nurse who would be looking after him. Standing again, Sarutobi walked out of his office after locking it. He had a Junin to see. And maybe, if luck was with him, a friend to save from some sick fate. Targeting range. Present time. Naruto could only sigh as he sat atop the tree in the yard, watching his classmates try to kill their targets, Iruka sitting in a branch next to him. Are you even sure you should be doing this? Iruka asked. Iruka-sensei. Something has been bugging me all day, especially about Sasuke Tem. Naruto explained, causing Iruka to look at him questionably. I can see chakra. He began. But when I look at that emo, I am seeing 2 types of chakra. He whispered loudly, listening to the clunk and twang of impacting weapons. What do you mean? The Chunin asked, looking down at the boy in question. Not even your 2nd chakra is detectable without you using a shitload of chakra. He explained. Iruka-sensei. Naruto sighed. When today is done, take me out to ramen, and I'll explain everything, okay? He asked, looking to his teacher in worry. Please, not here. He pleaded. Okay. Tonight. Iruka smiled fondly. Thank you. Naruto smiled, before a thought crossed his mind. Iruka-sensei. He asked hesitantly, catching the monk's attention. Do you know if they'll let me be a shinobi yet? He asked. I mean, I passed everything you gave me. In your own words. Naruto. A feminine voice called out above them. You'll get that answer later. The voice called out, causing Naruto to look up to see Kat had once again returned, her legs spread in meditation on a much higher branch. Oh, okay. Naruto blushed, accidentally looking up the Anbu's pants. I'm sorry, Anbu-san, could you please come down here so that I do not look like I am looking at your panties or something? He asked. Looking down at him, Kat realized where she was positioned and jumped down to beside Iruka. Sorry, Uzumaki-san, she replied, trying to be as unaffected as she could be while she could feel her entire face blushing a crimson red. Naruto, on the other hand, was looking at Mizuki as he graded Kiba. Kiba landed maybe 7 hits in the red on the targets with the kunai, but when he launched his final barrage of shuriken, Naruto saw something in the targets as they all seemed to sway. Taking a second to calculate if what would have happened if the targets hadn't been moved, Naruto realized that the trajectory of the weapons would have landed them in the bullseye of the heads on each of them. As Naruto turned to Iruka, he could see that the Chunin must not have seen what had happened. He was giving a rundown of what had been a very boring exam since Naruto had finished his. Everyone seems to be adequate so far, and I am sure that I am trying not to be biased. Iruka explained. Iruka-senpai. Kat began. I'm sorry if I am interrupting anything, but I am afraid that there is soon to be an issue with young Uzumaki. She explained, looking around, not seeing the blonde anywhere. Iruka was on high alert as soon Kat said the blonde's name. But as he looked toward the rest of the class, he realized that Naruto had disappeared. But as he looked closer at the rest of the student, he frowned. I found him. Kat began, pointing to the wall next to Mizuki. There, as Iruka looked at the wall, he could finally see what Kat was talking about. There, at the wall, crawled a shimmering image, and it was crawling toward Mizuki. Oh no, Iruka groaned, holding his head in his hand. Just as he was about to jump out to stop whatever the boy was going to do, Kat's hand found itself on his shoulder. Please wait, she replied coldly, leaving no room for him to refuse. I believe that young Uzumaki is about to help secure his friendships. She explained at his ear. Especially since I believe a young Inuzuka is having his exam tampered with ever so slightly. But, Iruka stuttered. Leave it to happen. Mizuki frowned at the way the Inuzuka was shouting at him to try again. Now, Kiba Inuzuka, if you want to embarrass yourself even further by trying to hit targets even in the wind, you should consider what you would be implying. He sighed. Are you saying that I am being unjust? He asked, getting a shocked negative from the boy and his dog, even though the dog walked off Kiba's head and ran off somewhere. Watching the line, he sighed as he saw only 3 people left in the entire class. Sasuke Uchiha, Hinata Hyuga, and Sakura Haruna. God, I should just pass her and get her out of my class. He growled inside his head as Hinata came up. Throwing her weapons, Mizuki saw that she made everything but one shuriken into the dead center. Sighing, he muttered that she passed, only for her to bow in front of him before blushing and walking back with the rest of the class. All of a sudden, Mizuki heard a tearing sound around him somewhere. But as he looked around, he saw most of the students looking at him wide-eyed. Feeling somewhat of a draft on his nether regions, Mizuki looked down to see that he was silently glad that he did not wear his usual uniform. Since as he looked down, he saw that his pants had been sliced down, and that his tiger-faced boxers were showing. But what made him even more embarrassed and furious, was that at that time Akamaru suddenly made himself known, running up next to him and promptly hiking his leg up and began pissing on Mizuki's pants. As you can tell from this and my other stories, I hate Mizuki Tem. Naruto at that time was laying on the roof, laughing his off as he realized that what he had done was something that should go in the record books as one of his best pranks ever. I should have done that a hell of a lot sooner. He laughed to himself. I think that you helped the matter with using that kunai that Dweejumaru pissed on so long ago. Kyuubi laughed inside his mind. Hey now, it's not my fault that Akamaru has that beef with his cousin. He laughed, looking at the newly considered kunai next to him. Smiling, Naruto looked over the side of the building, hoping to see if anything else happened today that would be memorable. But as he looked, he saw that Mizuki had both Akamaru and Kiba tied to the trunk of the tree and was scolding them for doing something that they did not do. What do you think, Kyuubi, the honey-scented Senbon this time? He asked, getting a slightly afraid look from the Kyuubi. Now, Naruto-kun, you promised that you wouldn't use that Senbon unless it was a necessary thing. Like life and death. The fox groaned. I'll wait till later then. Naruto laughed, causing the Kyuubi to face fault. And with that thought, Naruto used his own Shunshin to appear beside Iruka and the Anbu, who was by now visibly trying not to laugh herself crazy. Iruka on the other hand was using the, "You're in trouble and you know it," look on him again, which made Naruto feel kinda good, like he was home or something. Just as Iruka was about to say something, Mizuki hobbled over to the targets again and sighed before he pulled his wet pants up again. Now, let's continue, he shouted. Sasuke was of course the only one that was ready, so he walked calmly over, watching the targets for anything suspicious. But as he reached for the weapons on the tray, a loud noise was heard from behind them, towards the wall, causing everyone to look away for a brief amount of time. Looking back, Mizuki smiled before handing the weapons to Sasuke, who took them greedily. Did you see that? Naruto asked, looking at Kat and Iruka. See what, Naruto? Iruka asked. Mizuki handed him some kunai and shuriken. He said flatly, shrugging his shoulders. Iruka-sensei, Naruto began futilely. You told me that the academy only used something from their own forges, right? He asked, looking as Sasuke threw the weapons at the targets, hitting every single one of them dead center in the center of each of the targets' heads. That was a good set of shots. Kat smiled behind her mask, impressed with the way the Uchiha was able to throw them so easily. That's because those kunai aren't even heavy like normal kunai. Naruto growled, causing both Kat and Iruka to jolt in shock. Those kunai are lighter, and the shuriken. Same, except they're made to allow further rotation. Virtually no resistance no matter how far you throw them. Naruto explained, reaching behind him and activating one of the seals on his back. Kat, do you think that you can get one of each? I need to explain it with visual aids. He asked, causing Iruka to frown at him and the Anbu to nod before disappearing. Next thing Naruto knew, he was staring at a pair of weapons he had only made last month. No, he muttered, falling back lightly. What is it? What's wrong? Iruka asked worriedly, looking over Kat's shoulder to look at the weapons. Kat, Naruto whispered, I know that I have asked a lot of you today. He began, holding out a small collection of kunai from his back. But I must beg you, to please take those weapons away from here, and take them to the Hokage. He begged silently, handing her them. Tell the old man the ones that you just retrieved from the tree came from Mizuki. He gave them to Sasuke to cheat at the targets. Please hurry. The ones I just gave you may be a little hot. He explained what he needed as quietly as he could. I just forged them last night and I tend to not use water to cool them once finished. With that, Kat was gone in a flash. Mizuki. Mizuki smiled as Sasuke retrieved the weapons. Now that Sasuke has top marks, he thought as he watched him try to find one or two. It shouldn't be any kind of problem making him Rookie of the Year, he thought idly. Now, just to get my own shuriken back. He smiled as the boy brought him the weapons. Now, let's all get to the taijutsu test. He smiled, not noticing the number of pained groans coming from the crowd, most specifically, Sasuke. Sasuke could barely keep it together as the pain overrode everything that he was trying to do. As he had been throwing the weapons, he had to slow down his throws. Every chance it got, that damn twice voice kept telling him to miss or some other form of discouragement. But now, as he looked at his fellow students, he had to hold back the groans of pain as his stomach felt like he was being tossed in turn with pain. Walking slowly, Sasuke finally made it to the testing area. Hospital. Sarutobi frowned as he looked at Kakashi as he lay on the bed, most of his face covered in gauze. He could not even imagine what had happened, but he knew that something had gone wrong with it. Even now, a nurse was going over Kakashi's body with a wet rag, making sure there were no more wounds on the man. But as he watched, Sarutobi looked once again at the mask they had had to tear off of Kakashi's face. Along every inch of the mask was covered in one seal or another. And only two of those seals Sarutobi could recognize. Every Anbu mask had them. The chakra seal that made every mask stick to their owner's face with their chakra, and a seal that allowed the masks to be see-through, even without eyelets. Putting the mask back into his robes, Sarutobi sighed as he looked at the former Anbu captain. What am I to do with you, Kakashi? He asked himself as he looked at the manacles on Kakashi's arms and ankles. Hokage-sama. A shy voice groaned, making Sarutobi look up in shock as he looked at Kakashi to see him finally awake. The man was stubbornly trying to stand up, only to be forced back down by both the straps on his arms and thighs along with said manacles attached to him. The nurse didn't help matters by trying to give the man a smack to the back of his head. What's going on? He asked weakly as he looked from him to the nurse beside him. Hatake Kakashi. Sarutobi growled softly, shaking his head. I don't even want to try to understand why you would attack me along with helpless children, but you have no more chances. He sighed. After you recover from your injuries, you are to be escorted to Ibiki and Anko and are pretty much going to be tortured extensively. He frowned as he began to pace. Why did you attack me, Kakashi? Sarutobi-sama, you know I would never do that. Kakashi shouted. I mean, Sarutobi-sama, it was just last week that you charged me to protect you as an Anbu captain. He exclaimed, causing Sarutobi's eyes to widen in surprise. Kakashi, what is today's date? The Hokage asked, causing Kakashi's eye to frown, but also causing him to clutch his other eye in pain. What has happened to my eye? Kakashi shouted, looking around in fear as he felt the bandages on the rest of his face. What's happened to me? He shouted once again, looking feverishly for a mirror. Kakashi. Sarutobi shouted, causing both Kakashi and the nurse to startle. What is the day's date? He ordered sternly. Sarutobi-sama. Kakashi sighed angrily. It's June 10th, I'd say about 7 years after Kyuubi's attack. He frowned at the look that the nurse and the Hokage were giving him. I'm wrong, aren't I? You have no idea, Kakashi. Sarutobi groaned. This is not going to go over well. He thought as he grabbed a seat next to the bed. Academy. Everyone watched as the class went into combat against each other. Everyone had done admirably in the combat portion. But nobody had been allowed to do any kind of heavy damage to each other, so they were only allowed 1-minute fights. Sasuke was beside himself. Every move he made was something he felt all over his body due to the pain coursing through him. His left arm and leg were the only ones that were even close to not causing him pain. But as he watched all of his class fighting, he realized absently that someone would be getting a free pass. There were only 9 male classmates in the class, so something would have to go out on that factor. But as his name was called, Sasuke felt a sense of dread coming through him. Please don't make me fight. He shouted to Mizuki in his own mind. His opponent will be Uzumaki Naruto. Another male voice called out from behind him. Looking back, Sasuke saw that both Iruka and Naruto were closing in on the class. And since Naruto already has completed this test, he is offering to be part of Sasuke's test. The Chunin explained. That cannot be allowed. Mizuki shouted indignantly. That boy did not complete the test with the rest of the class. He shouted. I will not allow this to occur. He said snidely, spying an Anbu behind Naruto. Anbu, arrest this boy for interfering with the work of real shinobi. He ordered, only to hear laughing from the Anbu. Mizuki-san, Kat growled as she stood up from kneeling. You have no grounds to order me to do anything. She replied, looking at the silver-haired Chunin. And as for your request. She smiled behind the mask. It's the Hokage's orders for these two to fight. She explained, causing both Mizuki and Sasuke to gulp. Where does the Hokage get off? Mizuki growled. Getting into the affairs of the academy. He thought agitatedly. Whatever. Mizuki growled. Uzumaki against Uchiha. He frowned. Get in the ring. He ordered. Naruto could only smile as he looked at Sasuke as they walked into the ring. Sasuke, on the other hand, was giving him a scowl that promised pain. But from what Naruto could see, most of Sasuke's own chakra was being consumed by this second network of his. Are you feeling okay, Sasuke-tem? He asked smartly. Stupid Dobi. Sasuke growled to himself as he got into his stance. I'm fine. He growled. I'm perfectly capable of kicking you to the ends of the earth. He growled, rushing forward. Too soon, Junior. Naruto smirked as he sidestepped and lashed out with a kick to the Emo King's stomach before delivering a double-fisted slam to the back of the Uchiha's head. The hits apparently did more than Naruto had planned. For as soon as Naruto made contact, Sasuke Uchiha was on the ground, barely moving. Uzumaki. Mizuki shouted. You are to be arrested for assaulting a fellow classmate. He shouted in annoyance. Anbu. Iruka growled. Arrest Mizuki. He frowned, watching Mizuki's stare as it turned to confusion. And then arrest one Sasuke Uchiha for attacking without provocation. Hi. Kat snapped before Mizuki instantly screamed out in pain as a pair of chakra-draining cuffs were placed on his arms. Wait. Naruto called out, looking at Sasuke's now twitching form. Something is going on here. He explained. Just as everyone turned from Mizuki to stare at the fallen Uchiha, said Uchiha was now on his knees, coughing. But as he continued coughing, Naruto pulled out a canteen of water only to have it shoved away from the boy. Sasuke, are you alright? Naruto called out, only for Sasuke to continue coughing, only increasing in volume and duration, like he was trying to hack something out of him. Suddenly though, his efforts came through. For as he looked at Sasuke, the boy began to cough up obscene amounts of, to Naruto's vision, chakra-infused green goo, said goop falling to the ground. This continued for several more minutes before Sasuke fell to the side of the now much larger pile of goop. Naruto looked to Iruka and nodded, making Iruka disappear instantly. His destination. Hokage's location. Minutes later, after Naruto told Kat to release Mizuki to help with Sasuke, Naruto watched as the green goop began to change into another form. Looking around, Naruto sighed as he was the only one to really realize what was happening. He watched and smiled as he looked at the goop as it transformed further, revealing bones, blood vessels, muscles, and lastly skin. He could barely contain the nosebleed as he saw the form in front of him became apparent to reveal a very attractive, and very young woman. Naruto could only groan as he looked around the room. He had been brought here by some unknown Anbu with an ox mask when he had brought that girl back here. Even now, he could barely get everything that had happened out of his mind. Flashback. Naruto gasped as he realized how beautiful the woman was as he pushed her onto her back. Long silky black hair framed a very beautiful and angelic face, a pair of little moles decorated under her right eye, making her look even more exotic to him. But as he looked her over, he was amazed to see several different things about this girl. One was that her entire body looked like a well-toned muscle machine. Another was that her long and toned legs could not distract him from the fact that this woman had exceptionally beautiful C-cup, hung high on her chest with dark brown and areola. Another pair of mole-like birthmarks decorated her left, right above the areola. Naruto looked around only to realize that he was staring at a woman. Taking a moment to calm himself, he unsealed one of his extra vest coats and slid it as easily as he could. Unfortunately, he could not do so without accidentally waking the woman up. Looking into her eyes proved to be somewhat of a mistake as her eyes were an odd mix of green and purple in each of her eyes. Naruto-kun. A sultry voice called out to him, shocking him out of her gaze. Is that you? The voice asked. It only took a moment to realize that this woman was talking to him. Blushing slightly, all he could trust himself to do was to nod. Even though it was such a small thing to do, it seemed to make the girl happy. I did it. She called out before passing out again. This was the time that Naruto was dreading. For as soon as she passed out, it seemed like a beacon to everyone else. Naruto was alerted to this by the shrill shrieking of Sakura Haruna. Naruto Baka, she shrieked, standing up from where Sasuke was laying. What did you do to my Sasuke-kun? She shouted, causing Naruto's eyes to roll into the back of his head. I defended myself in a spar. Naruto growled, looking back at her, only to frown. Everyone was looking at him in wonder. Why didn't you just take your beating like a good dobi? Ino called out from Sasuke's side. All you're ever going to be good at is being target practice. Ino Yamanaka. Naruto called out flatly as he stood up. I hope sometime you will realize that not everything in the world is centered around a bloodline. He growled as he looked back at the girl. I don't even know what you see in him. He began as he walked over to Ino. After all, he sighed. When was the last time that he even acknowledged you? He asked, before looking at Sakura. And Sakura Haruna. He frowned as she glared back at him. Superficial bitch. He grunted. You should die, instead of relying on someone to come save you. How dare you? Sakura growled, now rushing at him. Naruto simply sidestepped the attack and sweep-kicked the little girl onto the ground. Learn to actually fight, before trying to attack me again. He growled, walking over to the unknown girl. Where do you think you are going, Uzumaki? Mizuki growled out suddenly. You should be arrested for attacking a classmate. Where do you think you're going? He asked. I'm going to the hospital. As you can see, there is something going on, and I intend to find out what it is. He explained as he turned back around and picked the girl up gently. She instantly clung to him before she went back to sleep. You're not going anywhere, prisoner. Mizuki growled. You wanna talk about being a prisoner, Mizuki-tem? Naruto asked. Why don't we talk about how you were just about to be taken to Ibiki and Anko before I decided that Cat should look after your precious Sasuke-kun? He began. Or how about you letting the Uchiha cheat on most of his tests? He asked again before disappearing in a black wind-like shunshin. Flashback end. Now, hours later, Naruto was still in his little room. He had actually sent out clones to get things that needed done completed. But as he looked around the room, he realized that he was being watched, at least from what he could see through the numerous walls in the room. So they're that afraid of me, huh? He asked himself as he blew out a deep breath. I wonder what is going on with that girl. He asked the walls. Private hospital room. Sarutobi frowned as he looked around the room. 3 other occupants inhabited the room. the head doctor of the hospital, Iruka and Kat. Okay. Someone please tell me, what is going on? He sighed as Iruka fidgeted. Hokage-sama. Kat interrupted before Iruka could say anything. Uzumaki-san defended himself when Uchiha-san attacked him before their spar could be started. Uzumaki-san easily defeated the boy, but before the match could even be called, Uchiha-san began coughing. She said, her hands hanging in front of her. I know that it seems unlikely, but Uchiha-san then coughed up a green smelly-looking goop out of his mouth and nose. She said, instinctively shying away when the Hokage looked at her wide-eyed. Kat-san, Sarutobi called. Did Uchiha-san seem like he had been having all of his energy sapped from him today? He asked. Now that you mention it, Hokage-sama. Iruka called out from the side of the room. Naruto-san was talking about how he was able to see something wrong with the Uchiha's chakra system, as if it had two separate sets of it and that the second set was moving. He explained, causing sweat to appear on Sarutobi's brow. Is something wrong, Hokage-sama? He asked. Doctor. Sarutobi replied. Is there anything physically wrong with this girl? He asked. The doctor turned around to look at them as if they were just showing up. Hokage-sama. He began. The only things that seem to wrong with the woman in front of us, is that she is literally as weak as a kitten until we give her some kind of nutrient. As such she may need perhaps a month or two, but she should be able to resume a life of a kinuichi soon. He explained, motioning to the girl's left. The only thing that seems to concern me greatly though, is that she seems to have both a summoning tattoo, of a sort that I have never seen, and that she has what looks like a broken seal on her neck. He said, motioning to the right side of her neck. Anything else? Sarutobi asked angrily. Other than those, Hokage-sama. The doctor sweated slightly. Whenever she has awoken, albeit a small number of times, he began. She has only done one thing, and that is to call for someone. Quit horsing around, doctor. Kat growled, inching unconsciously towards one of her swords. She's been calling for her, Naruto-kun, every time she has even opened an eyelid. The doctor cowed frightfully, causing both Sarutobi and Iruka's eyebrows to rise. Iruka, where is Naruto? Sarutobi asked, looking outside the window before looking at the girl on the bed. You told me that he would be here. Hokage-sama. The doctor called for his attention. Young Uzumaki-san, before you brought yourself and your compatriots here, left to, as he called it, get some air. But that was some time ago and I think that something may have happened to him. He explained, motioning upwards to the roof. Sarutobi looked at his hands, seeing how old and tired they looked. Shoving any sad thoughts away, Sarutobi looked Iruka in the eyes. Iruka, you've been the only one to ever really find Naruto whenever he went missing. Find him. He growled. Hi. And with that, Iruka was gone. Kat, Sarutobi snapped. Get Mizuki back in cuffs. I want that bastard dealt with. And make sure that Uchiha Sasuke is in a jail cell as well for collaboration. He growled out, causing a small snicker to appear from behind the ANBU's mask. What is so funny, Kat? He asked. Hokage-sama. Kat laughed, holding her side slightly. I already have the both of them in a medical room covered by armed Anbu Black Ops. She replied happily. And Anko and Ibiki are already there talking with the two of them. She said, making Sarutobi wonder if she had grown a sadistic streak lately. Who put the two of them under arrest though? He asked worriedly, looking back out the window. Well, she stammered. Uzumaki Naruto did. She began. When the fight was over, Naruto quickly asked me to put the two under citizen's arrest, backed with the charge of assault and collaboration to falsify documents. Uzumaki-san felt that he had enough right to put them under care until you could be bothered with the terms of their arrest. She said, finally schooling her voice by the time that she said that last part. Oh good God. Sarutobi groaned, looking around the room. Okay. Get those two under official arrest with more of the same charges for the two of them. Make those Anbu take them to the Hokage Tower and stay with them. I want full seals on their asses if it comes to that. He growled, holding his head. I know I am going to regret this. He thought as he imagined the fight he would be having to go through soon. Those damn council members cater to that spoiled brat's every whim. Underground location. Several figures, most of them shrouded in some kind of cloth, stood in a circular room. 3 of them stood out, for they wore none of the cloaks. Resembling silk-wearing princes and princesses, Danzo, Homaru, and Kaharu all stood before a small task group of what Danzo had named many years ago as Root. Now, Hawk, Danzo began, looking out at the assembled crowd. Did my sleeper agent finish his mission as ordered? He asked, making a red-clothed Anbu look-alike shudder slightly. No, master. Hawk began, his mask slightly scratched up more than usual. He did not get close enough to kill the Hokage. He explained. He is in fact laying in a hospital bed with Anbu guards, none of them are people. He said with a heavy voice. Did Sarutobi discover what I have done? Danzo asked, looking to the 2 tools that he continued to use to this day. As far as I could tell, Danzo-sama, Hawk continued. He has in fact been unmasked and is being taken care of by Anbu like I said. The 3rd Hokage has the prototype mask with him. Danzo growled loudly before grabbing several of his men and forcefully banging their heads together before walking out of the office. I have a fox to subdue. He thought as he fingered his arm, objectively looking Homaru and Kaharu in the eye. Let's go. Unknown location. Naruto sighed as he breathed in more and more of the poison that they were trying to kill him with. God, they need to get original if they wanna kill me. He growled to himself. You know you need to get out of here, right? He heard the Kyuubi growl. You're not doing that girl any good in here. Yes, I know that. Naruto frowned as he stared at the wall. But I want to find out who the hell is behind putting me in here. He explained, running his hands over his ankle bandages. And whatever they think that they could do to me, they will find that it's not so damn simple anymore, remember? Naruto frowned as he heard his tenant suddenly become quiet. He could only sigh as he began to count the number of holes that seemed to be ejecting the many poisons in the air. Those thoughts were countered, however, with the noises of a lot of clinking noises, making it remind him oddly of a great big lock. Looking around, Naruto sighed as he saw a graying old man walk into the room, 2 other people behind him. One was an equally gray old woman who seemed to be needing help from the man beside her. But the other man was someone who confused him greatly. With his new bloodline, Naruto was able to tell that the man in front of him had several things wrong with him. His entire right arm was encased in some weird kind of chakra, while his right eye made him wary as he felt the wrongness of it. Tossing a grim smile on his face, Naruto sighed before addressing the 3 old foggies. Is there something I can help you with? Or are you just keeping me here against my will for no reason? He asked, looking at the glazed eyes of the 2 older-looking people. Better yet, you can tell me who the hell you are. He growled, his temper getting the better of him slightly. Oh, do calm down, Kyuubi. The man with the bandages began. We have much to discuss with you. He replied absently as he walked over to a bench that mysteriously showed itself. You can talk to my hand, because last I checked, I was Naruto Uzumaki. Not Kyuubi. Naruto grunted as he turned his back on the 3. It was a mistake that Naruto would not soon forget. Swiftly, a barreling wind contacted with his back, causing him to fly face first into the nearest wall. Standing up slowly, Naruto looked back at the 3 only to see that the other 2 were down on the floor dead. Seeing the man standing on his cane, however, did not make Naruto happy the least bit. Looking at the man, he frowned. What did you do to the old people, and why did you attack me? He shouted out. I am the root of this village, demon. The man growled out. I am Danzo. Remember that, because that is the name you will be calling master for the rest of your pathetic life. Oh really? Naruto laughed. Last I checked, old man, was that I was the Kyuubi container. He explained. And if you think that anyone will ever be able to make me call them master, you don't know me at all. He sighed, walking away from the man, only to be grabbed from behind, this time by a small tree cluster, sprouting from the man's right arm. I don't think you understand, Kyuubi. Danzo grunted as he looked at the blonde. You can't fight against me. He began. I have the bloodline of both the Sharingan and of the first Hokage. You remember him, don't you? The one who nearly killed you and your former summoner. Danzo chuckled as he lifted Naruto higher. You don't stand a chance against me. Danzo. Naruto sighed as he seemed to draw into himself. Do you know what really pisses me off? He asked, looking the one-eyed man in the eye. And what's that? Danzo asked, his voice filled with arrogance. That the light, Naruto began, reaching his hands towards some of his seals on his belt. Hurts my eyes, he shouted, throwing several kunai and senbon into the lights above the room. The room instantly became dark, allowing Naruto to finally get free and have what he needed. Taking the immediate change of advantage, Naruto cut himself free from the branch and went on the attack, slicing anything that came into his vision as he clenched his visor in his hand, watching as Danzo attacked with whatever he had on him, which, unfortunately for him, was nothing but his chakra-covered tree branches and the chakra in his arms and eye trying to cast genjutsu on stuff that he could not see due to the darkness. Naruto, however, was never hampered by the darkness. So he quickly sliced off as much of Danzo's right arm as he could with only his kunai. Standing behind him, even now, Naruto smiled behind his own hand as he looked at the newly frightened man. You're easy to see with my eyes, Danzo. He began. Maybe you should have waited a couple more lifetimes before you tried to create your own bloodlines. Naruto chuckled. Do you know what I could do to you right now, old man? He asked. Maybe you should be more worried about what I do to those people. I do believe their names were Chelsea and Dacian. Danzo replied. It would be a shame if, all because you did not join me, and make this village the greatest nation in the entire world, that those two would find themselves having an accident. He explained. Naruto heard this, and promptly his control slipped ever so slightly. But whatever may have been going on, Danzo wasn't done. And maybe that cute little girl that seemed to pop out of the last Uchiha. Or maybe, just maybe, I make it so bad for you and that little ramen stand that you love so much, that you would have no friends as it is. He growled out. Naruto was barely holding in his own anger. How dare he? He yelled out in his mind. Kill him. The Kyuubi bellowed. Make him pay for threatening our pack. She shouted. For once, Naruto and Kyuubi were in agreement. Slowly stalking over to the man, Naruto promptly slit Danzo's throat, causing blood to gush over the entire side of the wall. The blood quickly turned into water quickly, however. Naruto smiled as he looked around. Okay. Danzo Tem. He smiled. Do you have any idea what happened on the night Kyuubi attacked? He asked. I don't care why a demon attacks a village. A voice called out to him, making him smile. But since you said something, why don't you tell me, Kyuubi? He called out. Tell me, why you killed so many of this people's citizens? He asked angrily. Naruto simply laughed as he looked around the room, not detecting any kind of chakra from anyone. So, you're the same as everyone else, huh? He asked. Clueless to what would have been this village's worst mistake in the entire world, huh? He asked again, his thoughts going back to when he first met Kyuubi. Flashback. Naruto was hanging upside down from a light pole as a ruthless mob attacked him. Beating him to the edge of death was just something that they thought would make them feel better. As he hung there, bleeding from numerous cuts and abrasions, he found himself slipping away from his body. All the pain in his body was slowly ebbing away. Is this what it will be like to die? He asked himself. Before he could find the answer, he found himself inside a small dank sewer, no sense of light coming from anywhere. As he looked around, he frowned. Great, even in death someone wants to with me. He shouted, slamming a fist into a nearby wall. As he pulled his hand back in anger, he looked down the hall, seeing a slightly glowing red light. Following the light, Naruto grabbed his hand and began to massage it. Entering the area where the light emanated, Naruto was greeted with the sight of a large cage with the word, seal, on it. Darkness seemed to roll through the entire cage, often licking outwards of the bars. But as Naruto drew closer, hoping to understand further what the hell was going on, he was surprised to see that there was a rather large bed standing out amidst the darkness, causing Naruto to frown. But as he looked closer to the bed, he instantly felt drawn to it. Closer inspection caused Naruto's mind to short-circuit suddenly. On the bed was a very pretty, and very woman. Red hair seemed to be cascading from her back, a pair of what looked to be a nice set of D-cups seemed to expand from her chest, making her seem slightly different than Naruto would have thought. Long tanned arms and legs made Naruto think of a coiled snake, relatively calm until ready to strike. Looking at her, however, caused Naruto to have another problem. For as he looked, 9 long furry tails came out of her lower back before dropping off of the bed. Naruto promptly did the impossible once again, he fainted in his own mindscape. Flashback end. Even though Naruto did not really talk to the demon that time, Naruto went back, purely on accident. But when he did, Naruto's Kyuubi-chan told him everything he needed to know about why she attacked that night. Let me ask you something, Danzo Tem. He began. What, Kyuubi? Tell me, does it require a lot of an order to have a squad of Root Anbu attack a den of demon foxes just so you can have your precious demons for your warmongering? Naruto asked, listening to the shattering of ice. Or does the Hokage even know that you, Orochimaru and someone from the Uchiha clan killed Kyuubi's maid and kits, and thus casted a genjutsu on her only to have her attack the village? He asked. Naruto instantly got the results he required. Danzo appeared in Naruto's vision, his face emanating chakra as he glared at Naruto hatefully. You have no idea what I have done to make this village strong. The man growled, raising his cane to point it at the boy. Danzo. Naruto frowned, turning to look at him directly. Do you think that nearly causing this village to be destroyed gave you any chance of being strong? I mean for Sake, old man, nearly half of the shinobi of the village died during that attack. And yet here you are. Danzo growled. I offered to take you in when you were first born. Nobody came up for it. Now as far as the third was concerned, you should have lived a normal life. He shouted angrily as he looked around the dark room. I could care less about what you think, Danzo. Naruto growled, looking the man in the eyes. And as far as my living a normal life? Naruto laughed. You should be more worried, Danzo Tem, about how the third Hokage is going to react, when all of a sudden, his three precious advisors are no more. He sighed. What do you think he would do if he knew you and those two morons were the ones responsible for Kyuubi attacking? He asked. So, you remember who you are, huh? Danzo asked as he watched the blonde move. You remember how you always played with the lives of mortals, huh? Or how you killed anyone you wanted to? He growled angrily, his eye wide with anger. Naruto sighed as he watched the mon's other eye shining even through the bandages. Why don't you stop trying to control me, old man? Naruto groaned as he looked into the air. You just don't get it, do you? He asked. I'm not the Kyuubi. He growled. I am who I am, and I always will be who I am. So stop trying to make me believe that I am something else. He shouted, blue chakra shooting off into the darkness. So, I'm making you mad, huh? Danzo chuckled. I don't care what you may think, Fox. He said, his own face showing his irritation. You will be mine by the time this night is through. So, old man, are you gonna tell me why you keep calling me Kyuubi anyways? Huh? Naruto said, staring at Danzo, hesitantly looking into his single regular eye. Why do you keep telling me that you want me, anyways? He asked, bringing one of his hands up to his face angrily. Kyuubi, you just don't get it, do you? Danzo growled. You have no idea how long I have tried to have you as my own little weapon against the world. Do you know that I have had plans to collect you for so long it's not even funny, but that damn Sarutobi is too much of a buffoon. He believes that that damn fourth Hokage sealed you. Hell, he even did it to a young boy. Danzo growled. I don't even know who was that boy's father or mother. He sighed. Futen Itama no Jutsu. Naruto screamed, sending several bursts of wind at the man in front of him. The bursts hit Danzo in the chest, causing him to crash against the wall. The blonde could only sigh before he was hit across the face by a bandaged arm, knocking him across the room. I don't care about this supposed bloodline that you have, Kyuubi, Danzo growled as he looked on from where Naruto had stood. I have a far more powerful bloodline, thanks to Orochimaru and his experiments on me. He said, tearing the cloth from his right arm, revealing 6 eyes buried there, all of them containing the eyes of a Sharingan. Does someone have a sight issue? Naruto asked with a small laugh. What, did you think that you would be making me have a shitload of fear seeing you with Mokudan cells and some Sharingan eyes? He sighed, brandishing several kunai in his hands. I don't care what you are, or where you want to have me do. Which I think I already have an idea of. He growled, stepping closer. I happen to like the way things are in the village. Naruto explained, sending out a burst of air bursting out of his mouth. Naruto smiled as this time he seen the end of where Danzo was going. Throwing several Senbon, Naruto quickly went through some hand seals. Kage Senbon no Jutsu. He shouted, creating over 30 Senbon needles from just one. But Naruto was not done. Futen Repusho no Higashi. He shouted. Suddenly, those Senbon sped up along with the push of the wind. Naruto sighed as he looked at the pincushion of another object. Suddenly, however, Naruto could not stop himself from being kicked in the stomach and slammed into another wall. So, running is all you're good at, old man? He asked. Why don't you just fight me fair and square, old man? He growled. After all, you're not afraid of a little old genin, are you? He laughed, only to receive a kick to the face. Danzo glared at him evilly as he stood there. You have no idea who I am. Yeah, Naruto laughed, whipping some blood from his lip. Actually, I do. He smiled, blood showing on his teeth. You're Danzo, the great and former captain of Konoha's Anbu Corps. Went from Shunin right to that position. Then after the Yondaime Hokage sacrificed himself, you quit the Anbu and became an advisor, leaving Ibiki-san to lead the Anbu. He explained, getting into a taijutsu stance. Your former skills constituted mainly some sorely lacking taijutsu supplemented by ninjutsu and a very good level of genjutsu. Unfortunately, one thing though, Danzo. And what would that be, Kyuubi? Danzo smirked. You hit like a girl, unfortunately. Naruto smiled happily as Danzo suddenly became enraged and started to attack. Fists, legs and heads were used in an all-out taijutsu fight, with Danzo quickly getting the upper hand due to his years of experience. This all you got? Naruto panted as he jumped back, Kyuubi's chakra already at work healing him. Do you think you're fighting Sarutobi or something? Come on, old man. He shouted, lashing out as quick as he could, slamming Danzo into a wall. You said you wanted to suppress the Kyuubi, right? He asked, getting into a different style, one that Danzo could not seem to read. You think that you can simply do that without sacrifice? He growled, using a chakra-empowered leap to slam into Danzo again, this time not even bothering to hit the old man in the chest. Several strikes caused Danzo to scream out in pain, but not before he was able to land a blow to the boy, only for the boy to pop out in a dust cloud. Ninja work in the dark, remember? Naruto growled. I don't care what you think a shinobi is, Kyuubi. Danzo shouted as he groaned in pain. But I know that this village has known peace for far too long. He growled. I will send this world into its own ways, making everyone begin the fourth great shinobi war. He ranted. Did you get dropped on your head as a child, Danzo? Naruto asked, only to be caught once again by a strike to his chest. Okay. No more holding back. Naruto growled. Finally. Danzo sighed. Hokage's office. Sarutobi sighed as he looked at the woman who had been brought in a wheelchair. Her normal black hair was colored different by fade or something else entirely. It hadn't been long since the girl had awoken, screaming about something or other happening. Looking at the way her face seemed to glow underneath her hair made Sarutobi think about her possibly being part of the Uchiha clan, but discontinued that due to what could possibly happen if that was let out. Everything about the girl screamed something Sarutobi had not seen in many years, a sense of hopelessness that Sarutobi had not thought about since Itachi was sent to kill the Uchiha clan by his own advisors. Looking closer, he could barely tell if she was even awake. But Iruka and Kat had told him both that she was indeed awake. Hokage-sama, Kat called from the corner of the office. We have not been able to find young Uzumaki-san. She explained. I have been sending my entire company of Anbu out looking for him, but we have found no trace of him. Of course you won't find him. The voice called out from the wheelchair. Sarutobi and Iruka were both shocked to see the girl looking at them now, a sort of orange and blue pair of eyes looking deep into them. Sarutobi could barely force himself to look away from the girl, while Iruka could barely stand against the stare she bore on the both of them. And why is that, miss? Kat growled, moving toward her only to have the Hokage stare at her and shake his head. Why would you think that we won't find him? Sarutobi asked. I have my best sensor-type shinobi in the village now looking for him. He explained. Oh, give me a break. The little girl laughed. You're trying to sense him by his chakra? She asked. Just how long have I been ingested? What do you mean, ingested? Iruka asked. I have never heard of this kind of thing happening to a shinobi of the village. That's because, Iruka, Sarutobi said, his mouth wide open in shock. You wouldn't find it in any records. He explained. If my memory hasn't gone completely batty, he began. Then the Uchiha had a strict way of doing things back in the day of Madara. He said, leaning back into his seat. God, it's been so long since I have heard of that imprisonment technique. He whispered to himself. Who condemned you, young one? He asked. My name, ya old codger, the girl growled. Is Amiko Inzushima Uchiha? She growled, her eyes flaring in anger. And if someone asks me why my eyes are the way they are, I will seriously jump out of this chair and strangle them. She growled. Okay, Iruka said as he looked at the girl in front of him. He saw an afterimage just slightly of a certain blonde knucklehead sitting in her place. May I ask though, who imprisoned you inside Sasuke Uchiha? He asked. Why don't you ask his father? Amiko growled. One day I'm training my off with my mutated eyes, and the next thing I remember is a dark place and the urge to get the hell out. She explained, holding her fingers over her eyes. Mutated eyes? Kat asked, trying to understand the situation. That must have done something, because instantly Amiko was out of the wheelchair and on Kat's chest trying to reach the woman Anbu's throat. Sarutobi and Iruka too stunned to realize what had happened, and the doctor who had brought Amiko in too shocked to see the woman move out of the chair without any warning. I told everyone that there's nothing wrong with them. Amiko cried. But those assholes wouldn't believe me. She shrieked, giving up on strangling Kat and instead reaching to scratch her eyes through her own mask. Amiko! Sarutobi shouted, causing Amiko to look the old man in the eyes. What Sarutobi saw instantly made him fall back into his chair. Staring him in the eyes was a pair of black eyes with blue teardrops spinning around the center of each eye. Iruka was the next to see her eyes, and even he was amazed at the beauty of a pair of eyes that were supposed to be of a more deadly visage. What, may I ask, caused your eyes to be like this? I mean no offense, he said as he saw her ready to pounce on him this time. I am just confused. The last pair of Sharingan eyes I have seen came from Uchiha Itachi and Hitaki Kakashi. He explained, sitting on the couch near her. I don't know. One day I'm out with my brother Karaui and the next, I'm waking up with someone hovering over me, trying to kill me while my brother lay with his eyes gouged out and dead less than 3 feet away. Amiko groaned at the memory. Sarutobi was now feeling slightly irrational. Amiko, were you able to see anything during your imprisonment? He asked. It may shed some light on things. He explained. The only thing I could remember during that time was waking up and seeing some things, like Naruto-kun struggling, or him trying not to get killed by the mobs. She sighed, playing with a lock of her hair. He was always so damn brave whenever someone looked at him, even though he was hurting. She sighed. Amiko. Kat asked. I'm sorry, but did you say Naruto-kun? She asked happily. That's not a fair question, Kat. Leave her be on it. Sarutobi growled, looking at the way Amiko blushed at the mention of Naruto. But we are getting off topic here. He said with a smile. Why do you think that we won't be able to find Naruto? He asked. Because, if someone wants to find someone, they need to look underneath the underneath. She began. When I was little, me and my brother Karaui would always go hiding in some tunnels that were near the Uchiha district, hidden I think by a statue for Kali, a great god of life and death I think was her name. She smiled faintly. Thank you for that information, Amiko-san. Iruka said, nodding toward Kat before the Anbu disappeared. I don't even think you know how much you helped us. I'm not helping you, Amiko said snidely. I'm helping my Naruto-kun. She explained as Sarutobi looked at her. He's the only reason I was able to break free. Sarutobi had to fight back the smile as he watched the little girl waver and sit down. Get this lovely lady some food. He smiled. I would love to have another talk with you, if that is all right, Amiko. He smiled. Only if I get to sit in Naruto-kun's lap. She blushed. He saved me. Sarutobi smiled as he nodded. Naruto. Naruto could only growl in pain as he saw Danzo coming toward him. You disappoint me, Kyuubi. The old man growled. Not once have I felt your chakra come out. You're still trying to deny who you are. He laughed. I still can't believe it. The blonde could only frown as he tried to get up. It hadn't taken Danzo long to whip his, even with the ways that Naruto had improved, no matter what he did, he was always one step behind the old man. I guess this is what experience can get you. He thought as he felt his legs coming back to him. Screw experience, he said as Danzo towered over him. Taking some of the Kyuubi's own chakra, Naruto encased a foot in chakra before sending said foot upwards, right into Danzo's crotch. The resulting shriek must have caused some kind of ruckus, because as soon as Naruto removed his foot, Danzo was on the ground, holding his crotch. Wow, and this time you didn't get away from it, he whispered. Then he noticed Danzo's arm. I guess the number of eyes you have opened means the amount of times you can use whatever technique you've been using, huh? He asked huskily as he felt more of his own chakra ebb away. Looking around for the exit, he frowned. Now ya old geezer, tell me how the hell to get out of here, he ordered. You're not getting out of here, Kyuubi. Danzo groaned, trying to stand up. I told you already, he began as he glared at the blonde angrily. I am going to make you submit before the night is through. And as I told you, Danzo Tem. I don't submit to anyone. Naruto growled, sending a side kick into a hook kick right into Danzo, who was still trying to stand. I am my own shinobi, he leered. I am also only the container of the Kyuubi. The Yondaime Hokage chose me as the container on October 10th. So why don't you go find some X-Lax to get rid of that pineapple shoved up your? He asked angrily. You don't even know who you're fighting. Danzo growled. I hate repeating myself, Danzo. Naruto growled, getting into his taijutsu style, even if it was shaky from all the fighting that the two had been doing. I know who you are. I also know that your Root Anbu are looking on, ready to kill me if I win. He laughed, standing up straight. Even if I don't win, geezer, Naruto smiled. You won't be the same man ever again. Root. Danzo shouted, causing Naruto to stare in shock as 10 Anbu-looking figures appeared out of the shadows, right where Naruto had been seeing them. Kill Kyuubi. Danzo shouted as he pointed at Naruto. Naruto quickly pulled more chakra. Potent chakra charged itself into his whole arm, this time causing it to glow red mixed with some blue. He slammed it into Danzo just as the man turned around on his knees and threw a concealed kunai at him, hitting him in the stomach. But Naruto, on the other hand, had much more accurate aim. His punch hit Danzo right in the chest, just below the heart, causing some kind of short red chakra explosion that blew Naruto back. Damn, I've been had, he shouted as he looked at the rest of the group of shinobi, his body racked with more pain. Looking down at his hand, Naruto visibly held in the pain that was coursing through his entire arm. Pasting a smile on his face despite the pain, Naruto was finally able to flex his hand and stand up. Note to self, he thought to himself with a cry. Find out what the hell I just did, he began. And never do it again. Looking up at the Root, however, caused Naruto to frown. So, you guys are wanting to get in on this too? He asked, watching the Root walking toward him. I guess the more the merrier, he said, drawing chakra from deep within. I'm sorry for drawing so much from you, Q-chan. He thought as he looked at his opponents. Then he realized that one of the men was dead on the ground, being in perfect line with Danzo's chest wound. Okay, that was unexpected, he said as he finally stopped wobbling with vertigo. Hokage's office. Sarutobi looked out at the village he commanded. He's out there, somewhere, he thought as he looked around in areas that the blonde had always frequented. But as he looked around, he could not even hope to see the blonde-haired child, wearing orange as he did one prank after the other. Turning around, he saw Kat and Iruka walk into the office. Any word on Naruto? He asked. Nothing, Iruka began as he looked around the office. All Anbu available are looking around where Amiko said there was an entrance, but the Kali statue that she described had been destroyed. So it was remarkably hard to find. He explained. Well, 20 years can do that to a statue. Sarutobi laughed, causing both of them to stare at him in wonder. Amiko Inzushima Uchiha, born, he sighed, flipping through some old-looking notes on his desk. According to these records, the little girl in there is older than both of you. She was born 23 years before Kyuubi attacked. He explained, causing both Iruka and Kat to cough and sweat drop. Are you telling me that she's 36 years old? Iruka asked. She should be a Junin, not an academy student. He coughed, seeming to dare the Hokage to be wrong. She wasn't an academy student, Iruka, Sarutobi said, handing over the file he held to the Chunin. Before she was ingested by the elders of the Uchiha for being a troublemaker, and a loose cannon, Amiko was on her way to Junin rank. And the only thing that stopped her from taking Itachi's place is that she did not have his Sharingan. He explained. But, Hokage-sama, how is she a loose cannon? Iruka coughed, causing Kat to look at him. Hokage-sama, Kat interrupted. I have a question, she said as she took up another, closer stance nearer to the Hokage. Was her nickname Blue Fire, by chance? She asked. These files that I have don't say anything about a nickname. Sarutobi smiled. But it still says that one of her own saving graces was being able to command fire on a level so much so that she didn't need to use her lungs. He smiled, inwardly chuckling at the expression of surprise on Iruka's face as he looked through the old files. A new face caused Sarutobi to worry, however. What's wrong? He asked. Hokage-sama, Iruka said worriedly. This girl, as you call her, he paused to gulp. As an entirely different girl than you might think. He explained. You didn't read far enough. He said, holding up the last bit of the file. Picking the file up, Sarutobi carefully leafed through the rest of it. Turning to one part caused him to laugh heartedly. Oh Fugaku, I wish I could kill you again and again for an eternity. He whispered as he went over to his desk. What is it, Hokage-sama? Kat asked, looking between the two. Amiko, Yugao, is able to pull water out of the air, something that takes an extremely high level of concentration. Iruka explained, making a no gesture while shaking his head the same way. I should know. Kat humphed. I'm still trying to get to that point. Kat, Iruka. Sarutobi groaned under his breath. This goes no farther than this room, understand? He asked, getting respected nods from the rest of the room. Before anything else could be said, about anything really, the entire building began to shake angrily, causing everyone to fall to the floor. Sarutobi surprisingly was the first one to make it back up to his feet, however. But as he stared out of his windows, he looked on as near the edge of Training Ground 44, several older buildings were now collapsing. That didn't worry him, however. What worried him was the loud howling coming from the area, and the large amount of chakra coming from the area. He could barely make out any kind of signature, but he could see the slight tinge of red coming from whatever was happening underground. Iruka, let's go, he said, turning around and wobbling over to his desk. Unsealing a small bundle under a disguised stack of papers, he turned to Kat. Get you and your squad over there, on the double. I don't care what the hell they were doing, but get them there. He said snidely, taking a long look at the paperwork at his desk. Sarutobi. Why do you do this to me, Naruto? He thought as he ran out of his office shakily. I just hope you're okay. He thought as he felt the shaking going everywhere. Leaving a note that he was not to be disturbed to a cowardly hiding secretary, Sarutobi took off to Training Ground 44, also fondly known as the Forest of Death. Forest of Death, Anko. As Anko sat in a tree eating a stick of dango, she remembered what had happened to her the last time she had been able to go exploring in the forest. I don't even know what the hell those things were talking about. She growled to herself, sipping some of her water from her pouch. Sometimes I don't even understand people, let alone talking animals. She sighed as she got up, only to feel a massive earthquake hit under her, causing her to nearly fall. Only by sheer luck was she able to launch a shadow snake technique to glue to the branch above her. What the hell? She thought, trying to feel what was causing all the shaking and moving. She tried to feel any kind of chakra coming from nearby, but felt nothing. But as she pulled back as much of her senses, she felt drained more than usual, but immediately regretted trying to use an unexercised ability when suddenly the entire area of where she was at was blanketed in chakra. A loud howl could be heard throughout the entire forest, a low keening howl that made Anko think of a wounded animal that would sooner cut off its own foot than accept help. But as she was about to turn away from her surprised reaction of running toward the howl, she was nearly knocked on her as more chakra pounded through the area. Anko simply took a steadying breath before chasing the center of the chakra. Whatever the hell is going on, she thought as she swung from the branches once again, unable to trust the ground or even standing on branches as the entire area seemed to shake. Forest of Death, deeper reaches. Onakashi-sama, a shrill voice called out, striking the entire area, causing everything to be alert. We found him. The voice called out. Several things happened at once. The entire area that the voice called in was blanketed with the chakra, alerting several more of the creatures that were intended. In that same instance after the blanket of chakra hit, nearly 20 metallic gray creatures appeared at the source of the voice. A lone silver and blue-colored creature, just like the rest of her kind. Shirai. A deep voice called out in a growl. The crowd instantly parted, allowing one single panther to enter the group and stand at its front. You say that you and your squad have found our future summoner? The creature asked, his silvery eyes seemingly staring into the female panther's eyes. Yes, my lord. Shirai began, bowing on her front paws slightly. This chakra that blankets the entire forestland is in fact his. She groaned as another wave arrived. I know there will be questions, Onakashi-sama. She began, her tail swishing behind her. But we must hurry. The boy is injured badly. She yelled, her nails now clicking onto the ground in agitation. Obanuru. The newly revealed Onakashi began as he turned around, nearly smashing his tail into Shirai. Yes, my lord. A voice called up from the tree. Get down here and guard the tribe while me and a team go find this boy Shirai speaks of. Onakashi ordered. Hi. The voice shouted. And with a simple motion, a squad of 10 war panthers, including Shirai and Onakashi, disappeared in an instant. Forest of Death, Sarutobi. Sarutobi's eyes could not lower as he looked at what was happening in the area. There weren't any people living anywhere near the forest, so Sarutobi did not need to bring more than usual shinobi. But as he looked into a crater that looked more than a mile long and a good 3,000 feet wide, Sarutobi could only whistle. What could have done this? He asked. Maybe Hokage-sama. A new voice called out behind the three, causing Sarutobi and Iruka to look behind them, only to see Chelsea and Daishin looking at the area in wonder. You should not ask. What, per se? Chelsea sighed as she looked at several burn marks. It is perhaps a. Who could have done this instead? She said, noticing several of the burn marks and the way they were made. And Naruto did not do very much of this damage. She explained. How do you know this? Sarutobi asked quietly as he surveyed more of the damage. Well, for one thing, does Naruto have a hive of Kikai insects under his skin? Daishin asked as he picked up some flecks with a pair of tweezers. Motioning for Iruka to come closer, he showed him his findings, a small patch of what looked like a small beetle-like insect. This isn't a Kikai insect, Iruka said in an odd tone. But it is an Aburame clan insect. And these burn marks on these buildings. Chelsea interrupted, motioning to several of the outlying buildings. They're Phoenix Fire Kaden Jutsu marks. She explained. Hokage-sama. Kat asked, looking toward some of the ground. All of the ground here, she began after she saw the look of concern on his face. It's been caved in around whoever did this. He explained. No. Chelsea cried from behind them before she seemed to appear in front of them. My Naruto-kun would not die. She shouted, clenching her fist. Shadow clone jutsu. She cried out. Suddenly the entire nearby area was swarming with Chelsea's clones. Sarutobi nearly dropped his hat as he witnessed something he thought he would never see again. Chelsea getting serious about something. He knew the woman to always hold back in what she was doing. Now as she looked for Naruto, Sarutobi smiled as he finally saw who the woman really was. Enlightening, isn't it, Hokage-sama? Daishin smiled from next to him. Iruka. Kat. Help her search please. Sarutobi ordered, watching the two disappear. Where are those Anbu? He thought. To think, Daishin said, scratching an arm absently. That blonde idiot you sent us all those months ago could do this to the both of us. He said as a blush came up from his neck. Hokage-sama, did you send Naruto to us on purpose? He asked. I didn't send him to you at all. Sarutobi smiled happily. Crane and Shark brought him to you. I only followed their suggestion. He explained, walking forward. Sudden noises from the side of them caused Sarutobi to leap back and for Daishin to stand forward, a weird sword appearing out of nowhere. Sarutobi could barely think about what was going on when he saw a black metal-like sword with a large hilt and a long blade. Naruto's design. Daishin explained as he looked at the source of the noise. A few seconds later the sword hit the ground. Chelsea. The man shouted, causing Sarutobi to forget about the sword momentarily to look up. Sarutobi did in fact drop his hat now. There, standing amongst the rubble and gravel of the crater, appeared Naruto. He was holding his right arm painfully, seeming to be barely able to stand up, which made Sarutobi wonder who could have done this to the blonde. But as he looked closer, he could see that Naruto was bleeding, and he was bleeding badly. A large piece of rock seemed embedded in his right shoulder as he looked at the older shinobi around the clearing. Chelsea appeared in front of everyone and instantly began to cry excessively as she looked at someone she considered a son. He was badly beaten, barely conscious, and looked like he had been through hell. But as she walked closer to him, she saw that his visor was damaged, possibly beyond repair. But the blonde was closing his eyes against the noontime sun. Naruto immediately collapsed on hearing his surrogate mother's voice, crumbling to the ground as he fell face first. Get him to the hospital, now! Sarutobi shouted as he ran to the boy and gave him a once-over. Chelsea and Iruka were gone in an instant. But as they left, Sarutobi turned around to survey the damage. This is going to take a while to repair. Daishin sighed at Sarutobi's side. Didn't one of the council members want to turn this area into a hotel district of something? He asked. I don't understand why the village doesn't just try to live in this area. I mean, the forest is a beautiful place. He smiled. Daishin-kun. Sarutobi chuckled. You and Chelsea wouldn't be the only ones to think so. He said, looking up toward the tree line. There, standing amongst the trees, stood a shocked and worried Anko. He was sent to the hospital, Anko. Go and check on him if you'd like. He called out, getting only a nod from the trench coat wearing Junin. But before Sarutobi could continue to talk to Daishin, he felt something approaching. Turning back towards Anko, he saw that she was on the ground, panting slightly as she looked into the forest. Looking up to where she was staring at in such fear, Sarutobi had to fight back the urge to grab some kunai and tell Daishin to grab his blade. With a shink of it leaving the ground, Sarutobi looked to see Daishin standing there with his weapon at a position that said come on, with me. Standing near the forest floor were 10 sets of silver-colored eyes, all looking at the scene before them. One of the pairs came into view at the edge of the forest, causing Sarutobi to look on in shock and wonder. The creature was what looked like an oversized panther, but there were a lot of changes to the creature. Gray spikes seemed to cover the body while plates of hardened scales covered underneath. What made Sarutobi look at the creature in awe was the creature's eyes. They're so much like Naruto's, he thought as he watched the creature move towards Anko. Oh, don't scream, little snakeling. The creature said as he leaned down to where Anko was trying to crawl away. My tribe may have embarrassed you many moons ago, it said, its tail swishing as it spoke. But I assure you, they did not mean to. They meant to only guard our territory. Excuse me, Sarutobi began as he walked closer. You can talk? He asked. What was that, sir? The creature asked as he looked at the Hokage. Oh, I'm sorry, Hokage Dono. The creature said, its scales and spikes turning color from gray to a light blue. I cannot hear you from over here, he said, jumping over Anko before turning back toward her. If you'd like, my tribe members will talk to you about some things. The creature said as he looked back to Sarutobi and jumped over the fence, startling both Sarutobi and Daishin alike. The creature landed gracefully over the fence and promptly turned toward Sarutobi and sat, causing Sarutobi to sweat drop. Well, now that that little problem has been taken care of. The creature chuckled. You were saying, Hokage-sama. I was just concerned you were able to talk. Sarutobi stuttered. But the sheer fact that you stand as tall as Daishin here and was even nice to one of my own shinobi is enough to want to get to know you more. Sarutobi smiled. Well, I am afraid I cannot stay long. The creature said, bowing down lightly to look the Hokage in the eye. I am unable to stay in much sunlight. I can understand that. Sarutobi chuckled, causing the creature to bristle. How do you know so much about me and my kind, Hokage-san? The creature ordered hesitantly. Not your kind, Panther-san. My kind are the War Panther tribe. The creature growled. Panthers are normal, and have no real voice. My name, Hokage Dono, is Onakashi. He explained. Oh, Sarutobi coughed. I apologize, Onakashi-sama. He said, watching the panther's scales and spikes return to the better-looking light blue color. But it is not your tribe, but your eyes. He explained. I have a shinobi that has the exact eyes that you do, only slightly different being that he has two types of chakra in his body. His eyes seem to reflect it. Are you meaning the boy that the one who smells like fish and the female that smells like burning lilacs took away? Onakashi asked hesitantly. Why yes, it was him. Sarutobi began, visibly sweating as the war panther's scales turned to a light red color. Tribe, Onakashi ordered with a bellow. Suddenly, the entire area on the other side of the fence was shown to now have 9 more war panthers, smaller than Onakashi, which made Sarutobi believe that he was their prime or chief. Someone hurt the one Shirai brought to us. He growled before turning to Sarutobi. Where did the shined one appear at? He asked. Naruto. Sarutobi asked. If that is the one you speak of. Onakashi nodded. He came out of that rubble over there, wounded badly. Daishin said as he pointed toward the rubble. Go. Onakashi growled, his coloring changing back to a deeper color of blue. In an instant, all of the war panthers on the other side of the fence were near the rubble, sniffing and scanning until they saw what they sought. Wait. Daishin gulped, catching Onakashi's gaze. Are you sending them down there to find out what happened? He asked, getting a nod from the W. Panther. Then can I go with them? I could help with things. He asked. You cared for the shined one. I can smell his scent on you. Onakashi sniffed. Suddenly, Onakashi lashed out and bit Daishin on his shoulder, alerting both Anko and Sarutobi to station. After letting go, the creature began to lick the wound through the shoulder, which eased both of them, along with making Daishin drowsy slightly, but shook his head to stop himself from falling over. Now, you may go with them, but be aware that that seal on your shoulder is only temporary. It will allow you to send messages to me and my kind from a far distance, and allow the same for us with you. The creature explained, its head hung low. Daishin was soon among the pack as they walked through the rubble, digging every once in a while to clear more rubble. Soon the small pack of explorers were out of sight. I can trust that everything will be all right, Onakashi-sama. Sarutobi asked worriedly as he looked over at the head war panther. I assure you, Hokage Dono. Onakashi said as he clicked some of his hind claws. I sent the rest of my tribe after any of the bodies. No one is supposed to attack a summoning tribe's summoner before he can recreate the summoning scroll. He explained. But Naruto has never known the summoning technique, let alone anything that goes along with it. Sarutobi frowned. Not yet, he hasn't. Onakashi began. But Naruto Uzumaki has been destined to become the summoner of the war panther and its tribes. He explained. His grandfather forgave the panther tribes many years ago, asking that the panthers and all of its tribes become the personal summons of the Uzumaki clan. Onakashi explained as he looked at Sarutobi. Sarutobi could only try to hold back his shock. But you know who Naruto Uzumaki's parents are, right? He asked. I mean, I thought that there was only the last Uzumaki and that was Kushina Uzumaki. He asked. Naruto Uzumaki, whether he is surnamed as Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, is still the heir to the panther tribes. Onakashi growled, his scales and spikes brightening. I don't even think you could deny him signing the contract, Hokage-sama. He explained. I have no plan to ever deny him anything, Onakashi-sama. Sarutobi smiled. Suddenly, however, Onakashi started gnawing on his rear paw. Something the matter. I think the entire problem with not being in the forest of death is the fact of being subject to creatures that are very minor in size compared to yourself. Onakashi said with a smile. Sarutobi chuckled before absently patting the panther on the shoulder. How would you like a chance to go to my office? I will have first word on Naruto's condition, and as soon as we get there you could rest your eyes away from the light of day. He explained. I can even have some beef shank brought up for you. That would be good, Onakashi said, licking his lips before the two walked off. Hospital. Iruka and Chelsea could be seen pacing the waiting room, both of them flanking each of the entrances. Neither were happy. When the two had brought Naruto into the nobody was even able to pay attention to them, scattering about acting like they were busy. One of the nurses, however, was just standing there. Get me some help, Iruka had shouted, holding Naruto in his arms. We have a massive injury to a leaf shinobi, so get your over here and help. He ordered. We don't accept orders from you here, demon lover. The nurse had growled, looking Iruka in the face, not even bothering to look at the wounds of the blonde. If you want that boy healed, take him to the vet clinic. I am sure they'll take care of him. That statement, however, did not sit well. In an instant, the nurse in front of them was introduced to an angry Chelsea, slamming her fist into the woman's gut. You are supposed to heal anyone coming into the hospital, you disgusting wretch. She growled. If you have a problem with the way your village's rules are, then you and your precious family should leave the village. She shouted. That was something, however, that caught many of the doctor's attention. As one particular doctor came closer, you could hear the man cursing as he looked at Naruto. Dr. Rashima, Iruka shouted, looking happily at Naruto's personal doctor. He got hurt again. He explained, gesturing to the bundle in his arms. Naruto had quickly been examined. Going into immediate surgery was something that Iruka had never had to worry about with Naruto. Thanks to the boy's tenant, the boy was always out of the hospital, one way or another. But now, as he and Chelsea waited, he could only hope that whatever had happened to the boy wasn't something that would keep him down for long. A sudden cough caused the two to stop their pacing and look to the doors to the operating room. There stood Naruto's doctor once again, a shaft of metal in his hands. Iruka-san. He called out. I wanted to report immediately on the operation that we had to put the boy in. What happened? Chelsea asked, catching the doctor by surprise until he got a nod from Iruka. Well, whatever happened with Naruto caused him to use a lot of chakra, and when I say a lot, I mean levels beyond cage level. He's hurting from chakra poisoning due to his issue, and his right arm was severely damaged when you brought him here. The doctor explained. He had multiple burns, lacerations among others. His right shoulder had been broken and dislocated when it healed quickly. He had dislocated fingers in each of his hands, and I swear if he would have walked any further under whatever weight he was going under, he would have 2 broken kneecaps. But what is the deal with the pole in your hands, doctor? Chelsea asked, looking at the item the doctor had been toying with. We pulled this from Naruto's left shoulder. We actually had to put a silencing seal on the operating room with all the screaming he was doing. I swear with the way the kid was acting he actually felt he was going to die. The doctor sighed. Is he gonna be okay? Chelsea asked, her eyes widening as they teared up badly. I think, with time, the doctor sighed. About maybe 2 months give or take, he should be back up and running for missions again. He said, smiling as he patted Iruka on the shoulder. You trained the boy well, Iruka. Doctor, Iruka began with a blush. I didn't train him, he said. Chelsea-sama and her husband taught him. He explained, pointing to Chelsea as she gawked at the instructor. Well, Chelsea-sama, the doctor exclaimed as he turned toward her once again. I must commend you. Why? She asked. Someone I trained and loved like a son almost died. If you had not taught him as much as you did about restricting foreign chakra among other things, the doctor explained, slowly laying a hand on her shoulder. He would not have been able to fight the pain and the exhaustion to get to where he was found. He said snidely, if you ever had a doubt about that boy's abilities, or your training, Chelsea-sama. He snickered. I would think that the rest of the academy would benefit from such training. He explained as she looked at him dumbfoundedly. Chelsea-sama. Iruka began as he watched Chelsea blush again. I must report to the Hokage. He explained before giving her a nod. I don't know when he'll be able to have visitors, Chelsea-sama. He began. But I do believe he would like you to be here when you wake up. I would agree with that, Iruka. The doctor explained. When he was conscious, he was asking where his Ka-san was and something about traitorous bastardized talking tree huggers, so I think Iruka needs to give that info to the Hokage. With a nod, Chelsea sat down in the waiting room while Iruka used a shunshin and disappeared. Naruto-kun. She whispered. What happened to you, my son? She asked as she sat down in a chair to wait for the chance to see her adopted son. Sarutobi had dimmed the lights in the office and gave the giant cat Onakashi a shank that he had promised him, but as he looked at the way the cat was at ease, he could only imagine what the plane the war panthers had come from. But before he could do anything to find out, Sarutobi saw Iruka appear at his door, looking crestfallen as he appeared, not yet noticing the giant cat near his couch. Hokage-sama. Iruka started, but as he looked to the right and saw Onakashi for the first time. Excuse me, Hokage-sama? He asked, watching the creature breathing at the side of the couch. Iruka, meet Onakashi of the War Panther summons. Sarutobi smiled, gestured to the big cat as the panther stood up from his impromptu nap. Onakashi-sama, this is Iruka, Chunin instructor at Konoha's academy. He said, watching how Iruka acted around the big cat. Ah, Iruka-san. Onakashi purred as he looked at the Chunin. I hear you have trained great shinobi. He said, his lips churning in a snarl-like manner. What do you mean, Onakashi-sama? Iruka said as he looked around. I have only trained several classes and have not felt the real idea of a great shinobi until recently. He sighed. And only then there was only Sasuke and Naruto who stood out. Oh, I wouldn't worry about the Uchiha, Iruka. Sarutobi laughed as he looked around. As soon as I am sure that Naruto is okay, and I have some idea of what really happened with him, I am having the Uchiha put into protective custody. He said, looking Onakashi in the eyes. I have discovered that someone used Sasuke as a prison of sorts, and that the prison was forcefully ripped away from him, and he has yet to recover. That was 3 days ago. He explained. Wait a minute, Hokage-sama. Iruka said quietly. Are you saying that since the ingested prisoner was ripped away, that Sasuke can't be a shinobi? He asked. Iruka. Sasuke's chakra was never his own. Sarutobi growled. He had levels of chakra that rivaled a Chunin. He explained. And now that Amiko has removed herself, he hasn't got the chakra coils to even manage a henge. I will not have the last Uchiha male still loyal to Konoha die because he couldn't manage to finish a single fight. Hi, Iruka said as he looked around the room. I just wish there was a way to give him something. Oh, he'll be taken care of if I have any way of it. Sarutobi chuckled as he looked at the Chunin. So, how is our favorite little Gaki? He asked. Well, according to our lowly doctor, he should be dead. Iruka frowned, ignoring the shocked looks of Sarutobi and the look of amazement on Onakashi. Fractures, lacerations, broken bones. The chakra coils on his right arm are damaged so bad he shouldn't be able to use any more jutsu, but somehow things are repairing them as usual. The doctor said that he should be back and annoying everyone in no time. Not my choice of words. He explained, holding his hands up defensively as Onakashi growled at him. Okay. Sarutobi groaned, worried about what would happen next. Did you give him his headband? He asked. I left that bundle by his table in his room. So he should find it when he wakes up. Iruka sighed. Chelsea is in the waiting room right now waiting on him. He smiled. I just hope we can get some answers. Hokage-sama. Onakashi began, drawing everyone's attention towards him. But as they looked at him, they saw how his skin changed colors again, this time to a placated blue with a tinge of green. I have received word from my tribesmen and the man who smells like a forge. He explained. They have found many bodies deep below us. Many were killed by wind jutsu from the look of them. And they were not just the great breakthrough. He whispered. And also, the blacksmith says that Naruto's kunai and shuriken are there, which are being picked up to cancel any thoughts of blaming the boy. But there are many blast areas from Senbon detonation. Senbon detonation? Iruka asked, looking at the Hokage. No Senbon has ever had explosive notes on them before. He replied. Sarutobi could only chuckle. Pulling out a small package from under his desk, he smiled as he pulled out a long Senbon needle. Here a while back, Naruto gave me a package. He began, examining the Senbon. In it, I found these little guys in seals, along with other weapons. All of them were forged by Naruto, Iruka. Take a look. He smiled, handing Iruka the needle. Iruka could only gasp as he looked at the needle. All along the needle were different seals. One of them, actually to Iruka's knowledge the only one that he could recognize, a high-yield explosive note emblazoned on the needle's edge. Hokage-sama. He gulped, looking at the cooling emotion on the panther's skin. Is it all right for Naruto to have these? He asked. I mean, all that damage that was caused, from the looks of just this needle, could have been caused by Naruto. He shouted. Iruka, calm yourself. Sarutobi began. Naruto for one has immense chakra reserves, and thanks to him being expelled from the academy and actually being taught, unlike what was happening at the academy, except for when you were able to actually train him, he is able to use them. He explained. Not only that, but I made him promise not to use these unless they're enemy shinobi and never on a ceiling. If Naruto would have used them on the ceiling, he would have been breaking his promise to me, and you know how he is about that. Sarutobi chuckled as he remembered Naruto glaring at him when he made him make that promise. Hi, Hokage-sama. Now, as it is, Onakashi-sama and his tribe of summons are a part of the Uzumaki birthright. Sarutobi began. I don't know all the details, but apparently before Kushina Uzumaki was born, her grandfather was able to save the War Panther tribe from obliteration, or something to that matter. He sighed. Now, however, the tribe needs Naruto's help. If he could find them a summon scroll and is able to send them to their domain once again, then Naruto would be able to gain their tribe as a summon. Not only as Hokage Dono. Onakashi began. We also are a part of the Panther and War Cat tribes. So in other words, Naruto would be able to summon a lot of cats with our summon scroll. He explained, causing both Iruka and Sarutobi's mouths to hang open. So, you're saying that Naruto Uzumaki would have control of the entire cat species? Iruka asked dumbly, hoping he wouldn't anger the giant cat. I said that he would have a lot of cats to summon, but not when he hasn't earned their trust. The cat explained. He has already gained my trust through his actions and with his heart. The cat began. Even as he was passing out, at that rubble site, I could see in his posture that he did not like having to do what he did. Onakashi said as he lashed his tail slightly. Sarutobi could only smile as he watched the cat. Now, you say that he's in bad shape, Iruka? He asked, getting a nod from the Chunin. The doctor wasn't exact about his status, since Chelsea-san was there and we all know how she gets about her Naruto-kun. Training ground. Amiko Uchiha, now known as Amiko Inzushima Zaruma, after who her mother had initially married. She had originally come to Training Ground 32 to see what had happened to her special tree, something that her and her brother had named a large oak that was split and had grown in 3 different directions. Looking down at a nearby stream, she could only smile at how she was looking. She had foregone the typical battle kimono, which anyone would have expected of a kinuichi, to wearing something a little bit more different. She was wearing a black and purple battle kimono, but wore a red skin-tight jumpsuit under it, kunai holster strapped against her stomach with a small ninja toe strapped to the side of her back with a shuriken holster strapped to her left thigh. She didn't even bother wearing sandals, going with a pair of light blue combat boots with hidden daggers on the toes. Smirking, she looked back to the tree. What would you think of this, brother dear? She thought as she fidgeted with her kunai pouch. As if by accident, Amiko seemed to picture her brother's face, fading away into the tree. A lone tear slid down her face, not even realizing what was happening. Sarutobi's office. The office was needless to say stock still as Sarutobi frowned. Okay. He sighed. We'll give Sasuke another week to prepare himself. Hopefully he can regrow his chakra coils and be able to do the job of a shinobi. He explained, looking at Iruka. Well, Onakashi began as he looked from Sarutobi to Iruka. If we have concluded the talks about Naruto, I will take my leave. He said softly, his back spines popping as he raised himself up, shaking slightly. When the boy recovers, please tell him that I wish to talk to him in the forest. He said humorously. I can't wait to meet him. Hi. Sarutobi frowned, watching the big cat seem to fade out of the office. If Naruto learns how to do that, he thought, the entire village would be in trouble. He chuckled. Iruka, get Sasuke in here. He ordered. I think it would be time for him to learn of his fate. He explained as the Chunin nodded and walked out of the office. Uchiha residence. Sasuke walked around the Uchiha grounds outside of his house, his back in pain as he walked. Damn that bitch. He snarled, his fists clenching angrily. If she would have stayed put in her prison, none of this idiocy would have happened. His eyes scrawled to an area of the grounds where a small patch of grass appeared to be disturbed. His eyes, however, were moved away from the grass instantly as he felt someone walking into the grounds. Turning toward the errant intruder, expecting it to be Danzo again, coming to beg him to join his group en route so he could become stronger. But to his surprise, it was Iruka, that stupid, boring, Chunin instructor from the academy, who had told him that he would never be able to become a ninja now, what with most of his chakra and capabilities gone. What can I do for you, Chunin-san? He snarled out angrily, his teeth mashing together. For Iruka, however, this was something he didn't want to do. He knew that Sarutobi had asked him to do this, and that it was something required of him, but he did not want someone to be able to bring hope to someone who physically could not be anything but a civilian. So the idea of him giving the boy hope just to satisfy some old people on the council who can't get over themselves, it was truly disgusting. The Hokage wishes to speak with you, Uchiha-san. HN. Was all Iruka got in return as Sasuke began a rather slow walk down the road toward the Hokage's office. Iruka was barely able to keep his eyes from rolling into the back of his head as he proceeded to follow the boy. But as he followed the boy, he was greeted with glares and severely angry looks from villagers and some shinobi alike. Turning to one of the newer genin, he frowned as the Kinuichi in question, wearing a pale green battle kimono, seemed to reach behind her back for what must have been her kunai pouch. Watch what you're doing, genin. He snarled. Now why is everyone glaring at me? He ordered. I don't have to answer a damn word you have to say, demon lover. She shouted, her light red hair falling across her eye. You should just go and die with your demon instead of killing Uchiha-sama. She snarled. Her snarling was stopped however, when Iruka's hand was brought across her face. You're a disgrace if you even say something like that to me. He growled back at her before throwing her over his shoulder. Maybe a nice chat with the Hokage will cause me to get some answers. Put me down, she shouted, pounding his back as he once again proceeded to follow Sasuke once again. I swear if the Hokage sees me like this my mother and father will be very pissed off. She threatened. I don't care about your precious mommy and daddy, little girl. Iruka growled. You're an adult as soon as you put on that headband. He explained. Your mommy and daddy can't do shit to me. Needless to say, the girl was suddenly quiet, making Iruka glad that that was a rule buried below all of the other laws. But even as he walked, the glares continued. Rooftops. Mizuki was silently happy as can be. And as he watched Iruka and Sasuke walking down the street, he had to stop himself from laughing as he watched the interaction between Iruka and the little genin. He won't get anything from her, not with her fear of her parents being killed. He thought as he watched Iruka walk away, the Kinuichi thrown over his back. He remembered talking with the villagers last night. Flashback. Mizuki stood before a small group of villagers in front of a large bonfire near the crater of the explosions. Look what that old fool has done to us. He shouted, gesturing to the destruction. He has allowed that demon to think it is one of us for the last time. He shouted, causing some of the villagers to pale. Not only has the demon caused this destruction, but he has caused the deaths of the Hokage's own advisors. He shouted, I have seen the demon do this. He shouted angrily, causing several of the villagers to become angrier. But do you know what the Hokage is planning to do to the demon? He asked, looking at the tower. He plans to make him one of our shinobi. He yelled, causing the crowd to become angrier. I don't think so. Someone shouted. I would rather die than have that thing to be near my daughter. A woman called out. I say we kill the damn thing. It won't be that easy. Mizuki called out, causing the crowd to step back. The demon has started already to cast its human shell, and has bewitched several of my colleagues, as well as the Hokage and much of his staff. He lies. Someone shouted out, causing everyone to look toward the back, and causing Mizuki to sneer. For standing in front of him was Morimino Ibiki. Mizuki Tem, the aged interrogator smiled. You're under arrest for the crime of creating civil unrest. He laughed, causing Mizuki to chuckle finally. Oh, only if you can catch me, Ibiki-kun. Mizuki laughed. Oh, are you telling me that you're a clone too? Ibiki laughed, causing many to sweet drop. But then again if you hadn't noticed. We've already caught the rest of your clones. Mizuki was now pissed. But seeing as how his job was already done, he smiled at the interrogator before using Shunshin to get away from him. Flashback end. Mizuki knew that the INT division was on the lookout for him. But even as he watched Iruka running away with the Kinuichi toward Kami knew where, he could only feel a sense of pride in the fact that he was able to plant multiple seeds of mistrust. I should have been in counterintelligence. He thought as he tried to figure out what he would be doing. You know, I should just kill you now, what with the severe amount of charges going against you right now, Mizuki. A feminine voice called out, causing Mizuki to sigh before turning around. He was only mildly surprised to see that the person behind him was not an Anbu, but someone of completely different temper. He was staring at the Hyuga branch member who he had tried to seduce for many years. Manezia-chan. Mizuki smiled, not noticing the killer stare he was receiving. Did you come by to take me up on that offer I gave you? He asked. I mean, you and I could start an entire clan together. He explained. I already told you, traitor. Manezia snarled. I am not going to leave the village on your stupid idea of a date. I have a man and you are not going to be alive very much longer. She sneered, her eyes burrowing deep into his own. Mizuki sighed before looking back to the street, holding his head down slightly. I'm sorry to hear you say that. He frowned, his hands flying up. Suddenly his hands flew into a seal. Nothing happened. Expecting something in the lines of me being a screaming baby on the ground clutching my head or something, Tem. Manezia asked. You never handled much in the way of common sense, did you, Mizuki Tem? Why aren't you in the branch house? Mizuki snarled as he pulled out a pair of kunai. Before he could do anything, however, he was pulled off his feet by someone behind him. Turning back around, he was greeted with the sight of Ibiki once again having found him. Mizuki could barely contain his scream as he was jerked back towards the Hokage monument, and to the INT division's headquarters. Manezia, however, could barely contain her laughter as she saw the man begin to kick his legs in a vain attempt to get Ibiki to let him go. Sighing in a slight amount of happiness, Manezia then looked toward the hospital, and the place that Naruto was now sleeping. She knew what had happened in the underground. Or at least what the Hokage had told her and just about everyone else. Damn that Danzo, she growled internally, before another sigh escaped her lips. At least Naruto-kun is going to be okay. She thought with a small smile, not even realizing the slight blush permeating her cheeks. Maybe I should go and help him recover. She thought before shaking her head and walking off, not even understanding why, but nevertheless heading to the Hokage Tower. Hokage's office. Sarutobi smiled as he picked up the last pile of already signed paperwork and put it in the proper place. Okay, now that that's done. He smiled. He turned around and tried walking away before the doors barged inward and a sweating Chunin ran into the office, his hands ending on his knees. What is it? He asked worriedly. Hokage-sama. The Chunin panted, standing up slowly as he tried to catch his breath. The civilian council is in session without you. He stuttered before falling back to his knees. Sarutobi growled inwardly. I was just on my way to see Naruto too. He thought as he walked near to the Chunin. Come on, let's get you to a nurse. He said to the clearly exhausted Chunin, who slowly stood up and nodded, walking in front of the Hokage. Sarutobi frowned as he turned and sealed off the office. Nobody's getting in there. He smiled smugly as he looked at the seal on the door. He quickly ran down the hall toward the council chamber. Hospital. Chelsea was once again staring at Naruto's bedside. Come on, Naruto, she urged. Get up, please, she begged. For the last 2 days she had been begging the blonde to wake up, even if it was to call her a name or something. Daishin had been at the forge, working his head off trying to get some sort of project done for the shop. She couldn't even really fight that part. No matter how much her heart ached for Naruto to wake up and show everyone that he was okay, and that no matter what anyone could throw at him he would be the victor. He had successfully taken out the only thing in the entire village that was an obstacle to peace. Route was made, not to protect Konoha, but to protect and enforce the ideals of a mad old war hawk. Danzo only cared about bringing the village prosperity through war and violence. But now that he, his puppet advisors and root soldiers were dead, Chelsea could only imagine the kind of power struggle that was soon to ensue throughout the village. I just hope Sarutobi can fulfill what he has planned. She thought absently as she reached over to Naruto's hair and once again brushing it aside so she could look at his bandage-covered face. Council chambers. This council session has now come to order. A rather balding man smiled as he looked around the gathered civilian council. He was a small man who had been able to command massive respect only due to his own mother's fortune. He had quickly sold all of what his mother had given him when she had died and gained numerous businesses that had only recently created fluid resources enough to give him a seat on the council. Why did you call us here, Malay? Another of the civilian council called out, rubbing her temple to stem any noises. We just had a council meeting last week. That was before Danzo, Hamaru and Kaharu were murdered by that blasted demon brat. Malay shouted, stunning many of the council. The demon destroyed most of our special forces and caused a crater in the eastern block of Konoha. That would be impossible, an older councilman shouted from his seated position where Shibi Aburame usually sat. No boy, much less a demon, could destroy that much of the village without a full scramble of the Anbu. And yet we have our loving grandfather figure, defending that thing. Malay snarled, pointing to the man directly. You spend too much time with those bug cavorting freaks for your own good. Shut your mouth, Malay. The man growled, raising himself up. You forget where you stand. Risei Vushon. Malay laughed, shaking his head. I know where I stand. He sneered, pointing at the desk. I stand in the seat of the Council of Power. Last time I checked, that was the seat of the Hokage. Risei shouted back, pointing to the Hokage's own desk and chair. This is not a civilian village, you stupid young pup. He growled. This is the hidden village of Konoha, the greatest village of the 5 elemental nations. He explained. This hidden village, you so call it, is a fallen corpse of what it was ever since that stupid Yondaime Hokage sealed the Kyuubi instead of killing it. Malay shouted. Every single clan in this entire village should be casted out of here and sold as slave labor for US. He laughed. And what do you suggest we do about the people who would destroy the village, Malay? An elderly voice called out from behind him, causing Malay to sweat ever so slightly. He gulped before turning around and gasped. For in front of him stood the Hokage in his robes and hat, a very serious look upon his face as he stared at Malay. I asked you a question, civilian council member of a shinobi hidden village. Sarutobi snarled, barely holding in his anger as he looked at the rest of the council. I would not have allowed a demon to run around causing havoc, that's for sure. Malay gasped as he looked behind the man, seeing the doors closing behind the Hokage. You should have had it killed when the boy was still a baby. Like my father wanted to happen. We wouldn't be in this mess if you did. He growled. Oh, and what mess would that be? Sarutobi asked quizzically as he looked around the room, watching Risei once again as the elderly man rubbed the bridge of his nose. I know you already know what that demon did to the Western Bloc. Malay snarled. I know of only one thing happening to the Western Bloc. Sarutobi began. And last I checked, the information about what happened has not even been made public, much less to this council. He sighed. As it is, it was dealing with a shinobi of this village, so you, Malay, have no say in the matter. Now why did this council become convened without my knowledge? He asked. We the council are moving to demand that boy's miserable existence. The woman councilor growled. You have protected him for too damn long. You people cannot even see a boy, instead all you see is a damn beast. A disembodied voice called out amongst them. Every one of the councilors looked around, anger in their faces at being called out as such. Don't bother finding me, since I am not really that important. The voice sighed. You civilians need to learn your place. After all, listening to you all bicker and bitch about Danzo Tem and his stooges getting killed has sent you all looking to take their places. It snarled. At this point, Sarutobi realized who it was. And all he could do was smile. You really know how to stir shit up, don't you, my friend? He thought as his smile deepened. I know this is short for me, but I wanted to get this chappy out to my fans and readers. I am not giving up on any of my stories and am in fact on the way to finishing up another of Uzugen, but had to rewrite it. We'll be updating the others